Chapter 4619. The manager of the North Island branch of the Central Chamber of Commerce was still Si-Hai Xiao. Although he had some conflicts with the Hong Chamber of Commerce, and the Hong Chamber of Commerce had put him on the blacklist, the Central Chamber of Commerce was rising too fast. Its power was no longer what it used to be. It was the third largest chamber of commerce, second only to the Five Elements Commerce and the Hong Chamber of Commerce. If it continued to develop at this speed, it was possible for it to replace the top two. Since the Central Chamber of Commerce was so powerful, as the manager of the North Island branch, Si-Hai Xiao's status naturally rose. Now, many senior executives of the Hong Chamber of Commerce and the Middle Island headquarters were proposing large-scale cooperation with the Central Chamber of Commerce. For this, they did not hesitate to whitewash Si-Hai Xiao's reputation. This was the trend, and even Hong Zhong could not stop it. Since the two sides had business cooperation, Hong Zhong naturally would not deliberately make things difficult for Si-Hai Xiao. After all, he was a businessman who could make money with peace. Unless it was an irreconcilable feud, he could let go of all other grievances. Strictly speaking, there was no direct conflict between him and Si-Hai Xiao. Si-Hai Xiao was just stupid enough to flirt with Shangguan Lainer and Ning Xuefei. Everything was his own doing, and it had nothing to do with Hong Zhong. "Hey, isn't this Manager Hong? What can I do for you?" Seeing Hong Zhong enter the door, Si-Hai Xiao lazily sat on the armchair in the corridor on the second floor and greeted him condescendingly. On each side of him was a woman in thin clothes. Although they were not peerless beauties, their looks could be considered top-notch. He was in high spirits these days. Although he was only the manager of the North Island branch of the Central Chamber of Commerce, and Hong Zhong was the vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, a level higher than him, he looked down on Hong Zhong. The Central Chamber of Commerce was just a tool for the expansion of the Central Chamber of Commerce. In front of the Central Chamber of Commerce, even if the Hong Chamber of Commerce was the second largest chamber of commerce on the Heaven Stage Island, it was nothing. Of course, even if he didn't like Hong Zhong was still an important figure. Si-Hai Xiao wouldn't neglect him too much. After all, the business of the North Island branch had a lot of cooperation with the Hong Chamber of Commerce. If the relationship between them became strained, it wouldn't be a good thing for him. "Manager Si, I haven't seen you for a few days. How are you?" Hong Zhong cupped his hands and smiled, not minding Si-Hai Xiao's slight. If Si-Hai Xiao looked down on him, he would look down on Si-Hai Xiao as well. In his eyes, Si-Hai Xiao was just a despicable person. If he hadn't been lucky enough to board the ship of the Central Chamber of Commerce, this guy would have long died in some mass grave. However, Hong Zhong's shrewdness and self-restraint were not something that a mere Si-Hai Xiao could compare to. Even though he looked down on him, he could still make the other party feel like he was bathing in the spring breeze. This was the ability that a businessman should have. "It's all right. I eat and drink as I should. Most importantly, I have beauties to accompany me. This is how I live my life. Do you want me to give you one?" Si-Hai Xiao said with a laugh. In the past 2 years, he had spent a lot of effort to find beautiful women from all over the place and formed a harem group. He hung out with the harem group all day long. Leading a befuddled life was his goal in life. The higher-ups didn't seem dissatisfied with his actions at all. As long as he could complete the task on time, even if he had a harem of 3,000 beauties, no one would care about him. I appreciate Shopkeeper C's good intentions. However, a gentleman doesn't take what others like. I can't afford to enjoy such beauties. Hong Zhong smiled slightly and walked up to Si-Hai Xiao. He asked directly, "One doesn't come to the temple for no reason. I'm actually here to ask a favor. There's something that I want to understand from you, Shopkeeper C. I wonder if it's convenient?" "No problem. Ask away." Si-Hai Xiao was still carelessly hugging the two beauties. He didn't have the slightest intention of letting them avoid suspicion. Hong Zhong's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. If this was an important business discussion, he would definitely turn around and leave without saying a word. Talking business with this guy was simply looking for trouble. "I want to ask if the business of sending letters to the secular world that your Chamber of Commerce once launched at the Zhongdao auction is still going on?" Hong Zhong asked calmly. "You want to send letters to the secular world?" Si-Hai Xiao was stunned when he heard this. He didn't think much about it and answered directly, "No, this business has never been launched at all. It's just that in order to make a name for ourselves, we used the opportunity of a Zhongdao auction to create a gimmick. After that, it was canceled." Canceled? But as far as I know, this business was marked with a sky-high price of 100,000 spirit jades. Hong Zhong couldn't help but feel a little strange. 100,000 spirit jades is indeed a sky-high price, but think about it. This is not an ordinary letter delivery business. It needs to travel between the Heaven Stage Island and the secular world. How can the energy and cost of this be imagined by ordinary people? I can tell you bluntly, don't think that 100,000 spirit jades is a sky-high price. It's a losing business. Back then, it was just a loss to make a name for itself. Only a fool would continue doing it. Si Haixiao curled his lips in a nonchalant manner. Then will this business be reopened in the future? Hong Zhong still didn't give up and asked. Who knows? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. This matter is not under my jurisdiction, so I'm not too sure. But I guess it won't happen in a short period of time. Si Haixiao was busy with the women beside him while taking the time to answer. So that's how it is. Thank you for enlightening me, shopkeeper Si. This old man still has something to do, so I won't disturb you any longer. I'll take my leave first. Hong Zhong immediately said after inquiring about the situation. Since the other party had already said this, it meant that this matter was really impossible. It would be a waste of time to continue asking, and it might even make people suspicious. Take care, I won't send you off. Si Haixiao raised his eyelids and looked at Hong Zhong's back as he left. Suddenly, he frowned slightly. Why did this old man ask about this? Could it be that he has friends in the secular world? With beauties in his arms, Si Haixiao was too lazy to continue thinking about it. Instead of spending time thinking about an old man, it was better to leave time for his two little beauties. This was the right thing to do. After returning to the Hong Chamber of Commerce, Hong Zhong told Lin Yi about Si Haixiao's answer. Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a little disappointed, but there was nothing he could do. Since the Central Chamber of Commerce didn't intend to continue, no matter how many spirit jades he had, it was useless. Chapter 4620. Yes, it makes sense. What do you mean, Elder Hong? Lin Yi asked quickly. I think its problem may be in two aspects. Either this technology is not mature enough, or this business is too sensitive and hurts the core interests of some people, so it can only be stopped halfway. Other than this, I can't think of any other reason to stop this exclusive monopoly business. Hong Zhong speculated. Monopoly. This was something that almost all businessmen dreamed of. For this, there were many who would not hesitate to go on a killing spree. Which Chamber of Commerce would give up their monopolized business? Lin Yi nodded thoughtfully. This Central Chamber of Commerce that suddenly rose was too mysterious, especially the huge shadow behind it. Just thinking about it made people shudder. Capturing a large number of gold core stage masters for human experiments, how terrible this kind of organization was. The two were silent for a moment and did not continue this topic. Lin Yi turned to ask, By the way, Elder Hong, have you been to Zhongdao recently? Yes, I went there just last month. I especially went to Kai Zhongyang and Ho Guanxi and asked them to take me to Tiandan Pavilion. The business is really good. Hong Zhong looked at Lin Yi with a playful look. With his relationship with Lin Yi would certainly not hide the matter of Tiandan Pavilion from him. After all, he was a real ally who could be included in the category of his own people. Moreover, he had asked Hong Zhong to help send elixirs to Tiandan Pavilion. How are they? Lin Yi asked quickly. Them? You mean Kai Zhongyang and Ho Guanxi? Of course, they're still the same. Their tempers are not warm and hot, and they can't change for a lifetime. Hong Zhong deliberately laughed. Elder Hong, don't keep me guessing. You know I'm not talking about them, but them. Lin Yi was a little embarrassed and rubbed his hands. The saying, even heroes have a weakness for beauties is true. To think that Kai Zhongyang and Ho Guanxi specifically asked me to bring you a message, but you didn't care at all. You only care about your two confidants. If they find out about this, their expressions will definitely be very interesting. Hong Zhong said with a rare, mischievous smile. Bring me a message? What news? Lin Yi was stunned. They told me to tell you. These 2 years, Master Zhang Liju hasn't been back at all. If he does, he'll send you a message immediately. Hong Zhong said. Oh, I know. It's rare for them to keep thinking about this. I have to thank them properly next time I go to Middle Island. Linny nodded, not too disappointed. It was expected that Zhang Liju would disappear without a trace. But as long as he waited patiently, there would come a day when they would meet again. As for those 2 confidants of yours, I don't need to say much. You should read the letter yourself. Hong Zhong laughed and took out a letter from his sleeves. Evidently, it was Tian Chan and Sydney who asked him to bring it. Letter. Linny quickly took it and couldn't help but ask curiously, Then why didn't you give it to me together? I wanted to give it to you together, but who knew that you couldn't wait to read the letter before you snatched it? I didn't want to disturb you. Plus, that letter seemed more important and suspicious. If I gave it to you together, I was afraid you'd get confused. Hong Zhong shrugged. All right. Lin Yi opened the letter in front of him. It wasn't as full as the previous one. There were only 2 thin pages, and judging from the handwriting, it should be Tian Chan's. Everything is fine. This was the first sentence at the beginning of the letter. This was something Lin Yi had expected. After all, with the powerful Vice Master of Middle Island, the Will of Heaven, looking after them, as well as Kai Zhongyang and Ho Guanxi, whoever dared to mess with them wouldn't be able to live past the 2nd day. Other things aside, at the very least, the name of Sky Executioner was still very popular in Nakajima. He was someone who could become a legend, just like Zhang Liju, and his strength couldn't be measured with common sense. He could easily kill a profound ascension practitioner when he was at nascent soul. Who would dare mess with such a monster? Other than that, Tian Chan also talked about the current situation of Tiandan Pavilion in the letter. Originally, before Lin Yi went to Southern Continent, because Lin Yi would send elixirs regularly, there was no shortage of all kinds of elixirs. The business had always been booming, but since Lin Yi went to Southern Continent, this supply was suddenly cut off. The entire Tiandan Pavilion could only rely on Tian Chan to support the elixirs alone, and business suddenly declined. This couldn't be helped. Although Tian Chan could also concoct elixirs, and the quality was not bad, no matter the quality or quantity, it couldn't be compared to Lin Yi, who had the pesticide cauldron. She could support Tiandan Pavilion alone, and this itself could be called a miracle. Lin Yi couldn't help but feel guilty when he saw this. He should have stocked up more elixirs before going to Southern Continent. In fact, he had already done so, but he only provided half a year's worth of elixirs. At that time, he never thought that he would be trapped in Southern Continent for so long. Not only was Lin Yi unlucky, but Tian Chan and the others also suffered. However, what made Lin Yi quite surprised was that although the business of Tiandan Pavilion had declined in the past year, it did not decline as much as he imagined. The daily turnover was still able to maintain about 60,000 spirit jades. This result was unexpected. Even if it was a lot less than the peak, it was still very exaggerated. After reading the whole letter, Lin Yi suddenly realized that there were actually 2 very key reasons why the daily turnover of Tiandan Pavilion could be maintained at 60,000 spirit jades. One was that Tian Chan and Sydney had good management skills. The 2 of them worked together. After Lin Yi's supply was cut off, Tian Chan's efforts ensured the source of elixirs for Tiandan Pavilion, while Sydney formulated a corresponding price increase strategy according to the situation that the best elixirs were getting less and less. The rarer a thing is, the greater its value. It was normal to raise the price of supreme-grade pill no matter where it was. It was abnormal for Heavenly Dan Pavilion to sell it as a common product. Moreover, Shueli's strategy was not only to raise the price, but also to limit the number of pills sold every day according to the last inventory. Only selling 3 best elixirs a day was a new gimmick that could attract people, and this had retained the popularity of Tiandan Pavilion to a large extent. However, just based on this point alone, he could at most guarantee that the Heavenly Dan Pavilion would not be destroyed. It was not realistic to maintain a daily income of 60,000. Hence, there was a second reason, and that was Wei Shenjin's care. Since Wei Shenjin joined Lin Yi, He would go to Tiandan Pavilion every 2 or 3 days. However, this was the result that the higher-ups of Snow Sword faction wanted. Chapter 46:21. They wanted to take this opportunity to express their goodwill to the will of heaven. So Wei Shinjin was not suspected. Instead, he was more important. Now he was the inner core deacon of Snow Sword sect. Although the position wasn't high, it was a very important springboard. Just like Kong Xiaoming in the North Island. After being the deacon of the Welcoming Pavilion for a while, he was now the deacon of the outer gate of the Soaring Pavilion. He had a lot of power. Although it was a position that Su Lingqiong gave him, he still had a bright future. Wei Shinjin was the same. The position of inner core deacon was not very high, but he had the right to purchase in the inner core. Even if it was only a small part, it was definitely not a small business. There was no doubt that Wei Shinjin's elixirs were sold to Tiandan Pavilion. Anyway, Tiandan Pavilion had a small reputation now. They were fair in both quality and price. Even if others knew about it, they could not say anything. Because of this, Tiandan Pavilion's business could maintain its 60,000 a day. This was not the credit of one person, but the credit of Tian Chan, Sydney, Wei Shinjin, and everyone else, including the will of heaven. Lin Yi had planned to go to Middle Island as soon as possible. But now that he knew everything was fine, he was not worried anymore. The top priority was not to go to Middle Island, but to replenish the elixirs for Tian Chan and the others. He immediately turned to Hong Zhong and said, "Mr. Hong, I'm going to focus on refining a batch of elixirs these days. Please bring them to me through the channel of Hong's Chamber of Commerce." "No problem. Just say the word," Hong Zhong said straightforwardly. Although it was a little suspicious of him using public resources for his own personal use. As the vice president with real power, he had this power. Moreover, Lin Yi was the honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. He was just borrowing the supply channel. No one could say anything. After chatting with Hong Zhong for a while, Lin Yi did not stay in Hong's Chamber of Commerce for long. After all, he had just returned to the North Island. In addition to meeting with his own people, he had to visit many other people in person. For example, Shanghai Tianhua. Strictly speaking, Lin Yi didn't have much interaction with Shangwan Tianhua, the sect master of the Soaring Pavilion. Aside from that meaningful roll call during the inter-sect competition, the only other reason was because of his relationship with Shangwan Lan. As a result, Lin Yi's relationship with Shangwan Tianhua was naturally closer than that of the other higher-ups. Of course, even if these were not mentioned, Lin Yi himself also admired Shanghai Tianhua very much. The strength of this top big shot in the North Island was not the only thing that made people look up to him. The key was his bearing, and his every move gave people a sense of majesty. No matter what kind of standpoint one stood in, one would unconsciously submit to such a character. The arrogant hall master of the law enforcement hall, Ram Jia, was always arrogant and disdainful no matter who he faced. However, he only looked at Shanghai Tianhua in a different light. This was probably the reason why. Most people were born ordinary, but there were very few people who were born to shine brightly. Lin Yi believed that Shanghai Tianhua must be the latter. Don't be fooled by the fact that this big boss was cultivating his character now, but when he was young, he must have been a legendary figure who was constantly being talked about. Early this morning, Shangwan Laner is practicing calligraphy with Shangwan Tianhua. Practicing calligraphy can calm the mind and also nourish the mind. This is the homework that Shangwan Tianhua arranged for her. Even if he didn't cultivate, he had to practice calligraphy for 2 hours every morning. This was something that couldn't be changed. Shangwan Laner did not resist this, although it was also boring. However, practicing calligraphy was still better than meditating and cultivating. Moreover, she seemed to be quite talented in this aspect. Even Shanghai Tianhua, who usually did not praise others, could not help but admire her. There were also words of praise for this. "Little honor, stop for a while," Shanghai Tianhua suddenly said. "Grandpa, what's wrong?" Shangwan Laner asked curiously. Did the sun rise from the west today, and he could stop practicing calligraphy? "You go and make tea. There will be guests coming to visit later." Shanghai Tianhua smiled slightly. In addition to his outstanding talent in calligraphy, his granddaughter's talent in tea ceremony was also the best he had ever seen in his life. It could be said that she was good in everything, except that she didn't like to cultivate, which made people feel helpless. "Oh, Wu Qing or Xing Nu?" Shangwan Laner asked. With the status of Shanghai Tianhua, the spiritual tea that he took out was naturally the best spiritual tea that was rarely seen in the market. However, if one really paid attention to it, there was still a difference between the two. Wu Qing was slightly lower grade and was generally used to entertain the elders of the three great pavilions. As for Xing Nu, it had to be at least at the level of the pavilion master of the three great pavilions. Shangwan Tianhua continued to write as he said, "Take a bit of the tip." "Ah, who was it this time?" Shanghai Laner was suddenly shocked. It was Grandpa's most precious spiritual tea. It took a lot of effort to collect a few tales. Usually, even he was reluctant to drink it. Only when relatives and friends occasionally came and chatted happily, he would be very stingy to take out a little. Even if it was a little more, he would be distressed. Today, he was even willing to take out the tea. What the hell was going on? "Little Lon, you know this person." Shanghai Tianhua deliberately kept her in suspense. "I know him." Shanghai Laner tilted her head and thought for a while. She guessed. "Is it Grandpa Hong?" "No, Grandpa, you have always given him Xing Nu's tea." "Is it a big shot from the outer island?" In Shangwan Laner's eyes, only Hong Zhong, her old friend of many years, was qualified to let her grandfather show his heart to her in the whole North Island. Even the pavilion masters of the other two pavilions didn't have this blessing. After thinking about it, she could only think of the big shots in the outer island. Shangwan Tianhua chuckled but didn't explain. Shangwan Lan had no choice but to go brew some tea, puzzled. Nearly an hour later, someone outside suddenly activated the formation. When Shangwan Lan opened the door, her mind filled with confusion, she was instantly startled. "Little junior brother, how could it be you?" Shanghai Laner opened her eyes inconceivably and said with surprise. "Ah." Lin was shocked by her strange reaction and said in confusion, "What's wrong? Is it strange that I come to visit Pavilion Master Shangwan?" "No, it's not strange at all. But Grandpa is very strange." Shanghai Laner's expression became more and more strange. "What do you mean?" Linny could not help but be stunned. "Well, I don't know." Shanghai Laner blinked. She suddenly thought that Grandpa might not have prepared the tea for Lin. But since Lin happened to be here, she must not let the goodies go to others. In for a penny, in for a pound, in for a pound. First, she gave the tea to Lin to drink. As for the big shots from the outer island, she would think about it later. Shanghai Laner quickly pulled Lin, who was confused, to the study and said to Shanghai Tianhua, "Grandpa, little junior brother is here to see you. I will go to serve you tea." Chapter 46:22. As he spoke, he winked at Lin, and Shanghai Laner then left mysteriously, leaving Lin, who was puzzled, and the little curly bear, who was hanging on him with ease, looked at each other. Disciple Lin pays respect to Pavilion Master Shangwan. Lin respectfully performed a disciple salute to Shanghai Tianhua. Although he was a disciple of Blue Cloud Pavilion, and the other party was the Pavilion Master of Soaring Pavilion, the three pavilions of the North Island were one. Anyone who saw Shanghai Tianhua had to perform a disciple salute. "You made a lot of progress after a trip to South Continent." "Not bad." Shanghai Tianhua glanced at him, nodded slightly, and then said, "Come and look at my calligraphy. What do you think?" "Yes." Lin was a little surprised by Shanghai Tianhua's familiar attitude, and even somewhat flattered. However, he had seen a lot of things in South Continent this time, so he would not lose his composure. No matter how powerful Shanghai Tianhua was in the North Island, he was not stronger than the Five Poisons Flood Dragon and the Giant Electric Eel, who were above the sea-splitting period. What's more, he was not hostile to him. Instead, he appreciated him a little. Lin was so reserved because he respected him, not because he was afraid. Walking to the desk, Lin was immediately attracted at first glance. What Shanghai Tianhua was writing at this time was the previous ancient tablet inscription. The content was extremely mysterious and profound. In addition, every word and every stroke on it contained the artistic conception of Shanghai Tianhua. A sense of ancient desolation came to his face, making him lose his mind unconsciously. Ordinary people might not understand it, but for people like Lin Yi, who had reached a certain realm and had an extremely strong comprehension ability, this piece of calligraphy was an extremely exquisite inheritance. If he could study and comprehend it for a long time, he might be able to comprehend some extremely exquisite martial techniques from it. I've long heard that Pavilion Master Shangwan's calligraphy is unparalleled in the world. Now that I've seen it with my own eyes, it's truly an eye-opener, Lin Yi said sincerely. It's rare for you to compliment someone. Shanghai Tianhua smiled. No, I mean it. Lin Yi shook his head. Although he respected Shangwan Tianhua, with his personality, he wouldn't go around flattering others. Even the closest and most respected elders did not receive such treatment. This was due to their nature. All right, since you're speaking the truth, as an elder, I have to show my gratitude. How about this? You can pick any piece of calligraphy in this study and take it away. Shanghai Tianhua said with a smile. Lin Yi's eyes suddenly lit up. The calligraphy was like the person. To some extent, being able to comprehend Shanghai Tianhua's calligraphy meant that he had the opportunity to steal from him. Of course, the premise was that his talent was high enough to be able to comprehend the essence of the concept. Although Lin Yi now had the 5 elements murderous aura in his hand, it was not a burden to have more skills. Moreover, his 5 elements murderous aura came from the 5 poison dragon. It could be used to kill enemies, but it was impossible to use it to improve his state of mind. A human trying to learn the state of mind of a beast was simply courting death. On the contrary, if he could learn something from Shanghai Tianhua, he would definitely benefit greatly in this aspect. The state of mind and strength were equally important, especially at the nascent soul stage and above. The cultivation method gradually changed from the outside to the inside. The improvement of the state of mind was particularly important, and Shanghai Tianhua was obviously a powerhouse in this aspect. I don't dare to refuse an elder's gift. This disciple will accept it respectfully. Since the other party had taken the initiative to propose, Lin Yi would not pretend to be polite to the other party. He immediately pointed to the ancient inscription on the desk that was only half copied and said, "Then I will take this one. You have good taste." Shanghai Tianhua could not help but laugh, shook his head and said, "This one is not good. It is to be given to someone else, and it is not finished yet. Forget it. Before you leave, ask little Lan Air to pick one for you. She is also an expert in this aspect." "Yes, thank you, Pavilion Master Shangwan." Lin Yi nodded and thought that it was really right to come this time. Shanghai Tianhua's calligraphy could not be bought outside, no matter how many spiritual jades there were. The fact that he offered to give one to him showed that he really did not treat him as an outsider. Lin Yi was right. Because of his relationship with Shanghai Laner, and because of his unprecedented super talent, Shanghai Tianhua did love talents. He once wanted to accept him as a personal disciple, but after thinking about it, he did not do so in the end. Instead, he followed Ram Jie's model and let him be. This was the most suitable training method for people like Lin Yi. There was no master and disciple in name, but in the eyes of Shanghai Tianhua, Lin Yi's status was not much lower than that of a personal disciple. This time, he took the initiative to give the calligraphy to Lin Yi was actually a disguised guidance. As for how much Lin Yi could benefit from his calligraphy, it was Lin Yi's own business. While the two were talking, Shanghai Laner had already prepared the spiritual tea. Shanghai Tianhua immediately brought Lin Yi to his specially designed tea room. The two sat opposite each other, while Shanghai Laner and Little Curly Bear each took a seat next to them. "In good tea." Lin Yi only sniffed it. Before he had time to take a sip, all the pores on his whole body suddenly opened up. He felt as if he had been baptized by nature. It was not that Lin Yi had never drunk good tea. In fact, since he was no longer short of spiritual jades, he had always kept all kinds of superior spiritual tea in the space of the jade pendant. It was mainly used to entertain friends. Most of them were expensive, and some even cost tens of thousands of spiritual jades. However, compared with the spiritual tea in his cup at this moment, his so-called superior spiritual tea was simply a straw. In the secular world, there was a saying that a sip of the bejeweled nectar could prolong one's life. Lin, he had never heard of it. After all, this was a myth made up by people. But now he had to believe that there was really such a good thing in the world that could steal the fortune of heaven and earth. This is called dew tip. It is Grandpa's darling. You can't drink it anywhere else. Shanghai Laner looked at Lin Yi's intoxicated look and laughed. Shangwan Tianhua didn't say anything, just smiled. To Lin Yi, being able to drink tea was an extremely rare pleasure, and it was the same for him as well. Every time he drank tea, his mind would become extremely clear. Although it wasn't as clear as when he was in a state of sudden enlightenment, it was still a good thing. Lin, he gently took a sip and closed his eyes for a long time. Then he slowly said, "The essence of this tea is really rare. Even if you taste it for a year and a half, you may not be able to fully understand it. It really is a rare good tea." "Oh, you also dabbled in the tea ceremony?" Shanghai Tianhua's eyes lit up when he heard this. "It can't be said that I dabbled in it. I don't know how to boil tea, nor do I know how to taste tea. At most, I just gobble it up and waste it." Lin, he laughed at himself. He had actually learned the tea ceremony before, but that was the tea of the secular world. It was completely different from the spiritual tea of the heavenly stage island. Chapter 46:23. Hee, it's not a waste to say that. You didn't drink this cup of tea in vain. Shangwan Tianhua smiled faintly, then said, "When I was young, I stumbled upon this tea in the depths of an ancient forest. After that, I traveled through all the famous mountains and great rivers of the heavenly tier island, but I didn't find any more. Only in that place would a little grow every few decades. Ever since I was young, I've tasted it, but I still haven't been able to fully appreciate its flavor. It's hard to find another tea like this in the world." "I see. In that case, I really came here today," Linny said and took a small sip. It was really memorable. 3 people and 1 bear sat around the table and quietly tasted the tea. At this time, even a usually active little curly bear was very quiet. Although it didn't know the tea ceremony, it could distinguish the good from the bad. The dew-tip spirit tea that Shanghai Laner specially poured for it was enough for it to digest for a while. After a full hour, when the flavor of the dew-tip spirit tea gradually faded, Shanghai Tianhua finally said again, "Tell me about what happened in South Island." "Yes." Linny nodded and responded. In addition to etiquette, the main purpose of his visit to Shanghai Tianhua this time was to report what he had seen and heard in South Continent. Of course, this did not refer to the trivial experience he had told others before, but the 2 far-reaching events that might even affect the future situation of Heaven Stage Island. It was true that Lin Yi was a disciple of Blue Cloud Pavilion. In theory, no matter what happened, he should report to the higher-ups of Blue Cloud Pavilion. Unfortunately, he really didn't have a good impression of the higher-ups of Blue Cloud Pavilion. In particular, the number 1 residence was forcibly occupied, which had made most of the higher-ups of Blue Cloud Pavilion stand on the opposite side of him. In this case, if he still rushed to report to them, wasn't it shameful? On the other hand, Shanghai Tianhua, the master of Soaring Sky Pavilion, was like a half-teacher to Lin Yi. At least, that was what the public thought. Moreover, Shanghai Tianhua treated him well. Moreover, in Lin Yi's opinion, this was also the top big shot who could best represent the North Island. The first thing is that there is a huge organization behind the Central Chamber of Commerce called the Center. They specialize in capturing gold core experts in the South Continent to conduct human experiments. Senior brother Liu Bienren and I were both captured by them, but I found an opportunity to escape. Lin Yi organized his words and said, "Yes, I already know about this. Liu Bienren has reported it before." Shanghai Tianhua nodded and muttered, Whether it's the way this central chamber of commerce rose to prominence or the ability to connect with the secular world, it's all because of this central chamber of commerce. Both are very suspicious, but we still don't know its intentions. There are no signs of direct conflict, so we can only investigate in secret. Someone is already doing this, and I believe it's not just us. Other sects and forces are probably doing the same thing. Someone is doing it. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat. If there was no accident, this task must have fallen on Ram Jia of the Law Enforcement Hall. Looking at the 3 pavilions of the North Island, except for the big shots at the pavilion master level, only the first person of the new generation could have the strength and means to explore the details of the center. The second thing, the spirit beasts of the South Island are ready to expand, or should be expanding already. They decided to include the surrounding sea area of the South Continent into their territory. All human cultivators have to pay taxes to them to ensure their safety. Lin Yi continued. Is there such a thing? Shanghai Tianhua's expression suddenly changed. What? Haven't you received this kind of tip-off before? Lin Yi couldn't help feeling a little strange. It had been at least half a year since he mistakenly broke into the Spirit Beast Conference. It was reasonable to say that they should have taken action long ago. Could it be that something happened inside the Spirit Beasts? No, there's no such news. However, although our 3 pavilions have also set up intelligence points in the South Continent Sea area, the distance is long after all, and the intelligence efficiency has always been low. If something really happens, it's not impossible for the intelligence points to be paralyzed for a while. Shanghai Tianhua frowned slightly, and then asked in confusion, this is the internal secret of the spirit beasts, right? How do you know this news? I accidentally entered the hinterland of the South Island because I was chased by the old sect of Shishan. I happened to encounter them holding a spirit beast conference, so I accidentally heard this news. At that time, the crowd was excited, and all the spirit beasts were stirred up. If I'm not mistaken, they will definitely carry out this matter. It's just a matter of time. Lin Yi said firmly. Well, since the disappearance of the Spirit Beast King, the Spirit Beasts have indeed been a little restless. Vermilion Bird should be the one in charge now, right? Shanghai Tianhua asked. That's right. Lin Yi nodded, but he did not go into further detail about the current situation of the Spirit Beasts. Firstly, it was not necessary at the moment, and secondly, it was the Spirit Beast matter after all. He still had to consider the feelings of the ghost. Okay, although this matter can't be said to have any impact on the North Island for the time being, if the Spirit Beasts really do this, they won't be satisfied with this. When the time comes, they will definitely take further action. Just in case, we have to treat this matter carefully. On behalf of the 3 pavilions in the North Island, I will first record your merit. Shanghai Tianhua pondered. You're too serious. No matter what, I'm still a disciple of Blue Cloud Pavilion. It's my duty to report these matters, so there's no merit to be said. Lin Yi shook his head. It's good that you have this awareness, but what should be yours will be yours. Shanghai Tianhua smiled indifferently and suddenly asked with interest, I heard from Little Lon that you've already participated in the selection of the East Continent's Morning Star Academy in the South Continent, but you don't want to go. This time, seeing that Lin Yi's strength had been reborn, Shanghai Tianhua originally intended to recommend him to go to the East Continent. After all, after Ram Jia, this was the disciple of the 3 pavilions that he was most optimistic about. In the end, he heard about this matter from Shanghai Laner. Lin Yi was slightly stunned, glanced at Shanghai Laner, and nodded. Well, I don't have this thought for the time being, but when the time comes, I will definitely go to the East Continent. Otherwise, I'll be a frog in a well. That's good. I thought you were the same as Ram Jia, looking down on the East Continent like weeds. Shanghai Tianhua paused and said earnestly, although the academies in the East Continent are full of geniuses, the atmosphere in the academies is generally too impetuous. For people like you in Ram Jia, it's not strange that you look down on those so-called geniuses. However, the East Continent is, after all, the pinnacle of the entire 5 major islands in the Heaven Stage. There are many experts, hidden dragons, and crouching tigers. Young people should still have a chance to try their luck. Chapter 46-24. After reporting these two matters, he had nothing else to say. They were either too trivial or related to his core secrets. Even though he had a good impression of Shangwan Tianhua, and even though he had a relationship with Shangwan Laner, their relationship was not close enough for him to confide in him. Novel seeing that he did not continue to speak, Shangwan Tianhua did not ask more and immediately changed the topic. What do you think of the 3 pavilions of the North Island now? Linny thought for a while and answered with 4 words. Talented people are coming out in large numbers. Haha, you're not wrong. Since you joined the Welcoming Pavilion, there have been many outstanding people in the 3 pavilions in the past 2 years. Do you know that the old guys in the Elder Council have given you a code name? Shangwan Tianhua laughed. What code name? He asked in surprise. The Golden Generation, Shangwan Tianhua said with a smile. He was speechless. There was even a code name. The elders in the Elder Council were really free. Although it's exaggerated, it's not too outrageous. Your batch of newcomers is already very outstanding. In addition to you, Xiao Ran and Meng Tong are also not bad. Su Lingchong's strength just happened to improve by leaps and bounds in the past 2 years, so he is also the representative of your golden generation. There are also people like Yu Zhe, who all look good. There's also someone called Ma Dang Chong, who has been very eye-catching recently. Do you think these people are qualified to be part of the golden generation? Shangwan Tianhua named one by one. The fact that he could remember the names of these people was already an affirmation of their strength. In the past, although 1 or 2 amazing people would appear from time to time in the 3 pavilions, there would never be a situation like this where all of a sudden, especially someone at Lin Yi's level. It was rare to see someone like this in hundreds of years. Read the full text because of the sudden emergence of the Golden Generation. Most people were very optimistic about the prospects of the 3 pavilions of the North Island. When the Golden Generation really grew up, the 3 pavilions of the North Island would be revitalized again. Among these people, I only know about Xiao Ran's background. He was indeed a rare talent, and he had a well-developed hairstyle. As for the others, I don't know much about them. Maybe it's because of some kind of fortuitous encounter, but I always feel that their strength is a little strange. He commented truthfully. Haha, aren't you the same? Shangwan Tianhua couldn't help but laugh. It feels completely different when it's on me and when it's on someone else. Maybe it's just my imagination, Linny said with a shrug. Shangwan Tianhua smiled non-committally. At this time, the taste of the tea had become extremely light. When drinking tea, one should know when to stop. Furthermore, he was obviously reluctant to reveal his heart again. This was his favorite. He immediately said to Shangwan Laner, Little on take Lin Yi to the study and pick a piece of calligraphy. Okay. Shangwan Laner immediately pulled Lin Yi and ran into the study. A moment later, Lin Yi came out with a strange expression. He carried a long and exquisite scroll on his back. He bowed deeply to Shangwan Tianhua and said, Thank you for your kindness, Pavilion Master. This disciple will take his leave first. You can come often in the future. There aren't many people who can make this old man reveal his heart. You're one of them. Shangwan Tianhua nodded lightly. Then he added, Of course, it's not every time. There aren't many of these left. Yes, I have your words. This disciple will definitely not be polite with you. Lin Yi smiled, and then was easily sent out of the door by Shangwan Laner and Little Curly Bear. When Shangwan Laner came back after sending Lin Yi off, Shangwan Tianhua saw her sneaky and guilty look. He immediately became suspicious and asked, Little on which piece of calligraphy did you choose for him? Oh, it's that mantra, Shangwan Laner said vaguely, avoiding his gaze. What mantra? Grandpa has written more than a dozen mantras. Which one did you choose? Shangwan Tianhua suddenly had a bad premonition in his heart. It's the one that gives people a headache. Shangwan Laner pouted. Gives people a headache? Shangwan Tianhua felt more and more uneasy. He suddenly trembled and said in shock, Little Lon we didn't give him the 10,000 words mantra, did you? Yes. Shangwan Laner shrunk her neck and nodded. When Shangwan Tianhua heard this, he almost spat out a mouthful of old blood. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry and said, "That's our Shangwan family's ancestral knowledge, not to mention a whole 10,000 words. Grandpa worked hard for an entire month to copy it down. You said yourself that you can choose as you wish from the study. You are the Soaring Sky Pavilion's pavilion master. You won't go back on your word, right?" Shangwan Lena muttered. "Go back on my word? How can I go back on my word when I've already given it away?" Shangwan Tianhua shook his head speechlessly. He could only shake his head and sigh. "AI, it's true that girls are extroverted. We haven't done anything yet, and you're already thinking of ways to trick your own grandfather." "When did I trick you?" Shangwan Laner suddenly blushed a little. She ran over and hugged Shangwan Tianhua's arm and said coquettishly, "Little junior brother isn't an outsider. It doesn't matter if I give him the 10,000 words mantra." Okay, he's not an outsider." Shangwan Tianhua rubbed his granddaughter's head and said with emotion, "To be honest, this child is really extraordinary. I thought he would be the next Ramjia. I didn't expect that I still underestimated him after seeing him today. I regret not accepting him as a disciple. It's not too late now. Anyway, little junior brother hasn't formally become a disciple yet. Should I go and tell him now?" Shangwan Laner's eyes lit up. If Lin Yi could become her grandfather's disciple, their relationship would be even closer. Of course, she was happy to see it happen. There's no need for that. I'm just saying, if Lin Yi really becomes my disciple, it won't be a good thing for him. At least, I can't help him reach the nascent soul stage in 2 years. The only thing I can do now is to give him some pointers. Shangwan Tianhua shook his head slightly. "That's right. Oh, okay." Shangwan Laner couldn't help but be a little disappointed. Suddenly, she rolled her eyes and asked, "Grandfather, are you preparing this for little junior brother?" "Yes." Shangwan Tianhua nodded. "Really? How could you be willing to let little junior brother drink the dew?" Shangwan Laner suddenly became more and more surprised. There were only a few people in the world who could make her grandfather take out the dew. No matter how she thought about it, she didn't think that little junior brother had this qualification. After all, even Ramjia had never received such treatment. A grown girl can't be kept at home. Since little Shangwan Laner is so eager to let him drink the dew, what can I say? Shangwan Tianhua looked at Shangwan Laner mischievously and said with a smile. Chapter 46-25. "Grandpa, what are you talking about?" Shanghai Laner suddenly blushed. She turned around and ran away in embarrassment. After a while, she came back with a small wooden box in her hand. She handed it to Shanghai Tianhua and said, "This is a gift from little junior brother. You can open it and see for yourself." Oh, Shanghai Tianhua opened the wooden box. There were 2 things inside. One was an exquisite spirit jade bottle, and the other was wrapped in a red cloth. Shanghai Tianhua's eyes suddenly lit up. Star ink milk? Infant ginseng? This boy is really extravagant. Whether it was the star ink milk or the infant ginseng, they were both good things that were hard to find in the world. This was not because Shanghai Tianhua's level was high. Even if it was useless to him, he could always give it to others. Not to mention that the infant ginseng and star ink milk could be used to refine higher-level pills. The value of Lin Yi's return this time was probably not below his due sharp spirit tea. This is not a problem for little junior brother. Shanghai Laner proudly raised her chin. Let's see how far he can go in the future. All right, little Laner, since you've given him the 10,000 character mantra, you should make a new copy for yourself. This is our Shangwan family's heirloom. We can't just disappear just like that. Shangwan Tianhua looked at his granddaughter with an amused look on his face. An entire 10,000 words. Grandpa, are you joking? Shanghai Laner suddenly felt bad. I'm not joking. This important task will be handed over to you. Write it slowly. Although Shanghai Tianhua had a smile on his face, his tone was not negotiable. Oh! Shanghai Laner was completely listless. She had no choice but to walk towards the study room. 10,000 words incantation. How long would it take to write it? All right, let this girl sharpen her temperament. Shanghai Tianhua smiled and looked back at the things Lin Yi had given him. He couldn't help but recall what Lin Yi had just said. He suddenly snapped his fingers and said, "Find out the information about Su Lingchong and the group of people gathered under him. Arrange for people to keep an eye on them." Lin Yi felt refreshed as he walked out of Hualan House. It wasn't just because he had drunk dew point, but also because he had obtained the 10,000 words mantra. He had only taken a cursory look at it, and he knew that it wasn't something simple. He would find time to study in the future, and he believed that he would gain something. Returning to Blue Cloud Pavilion, Lin Yi had planned to immediately start refining, but he didn't expect that there would be someone waiting outside the courtyard. This person was none other than Clear Cloud Pavilion's eldest senior brother, Jia Mufan. "Brother Jia, how have you been?" Lin Yi cupped his hands in greeting from afar. "Junior brother Lin, how have you been? You've made me wait for a long time." Jia Mufan welcomed him with a smile. This was the truth. This time, he came to visit Lin Yi as soon as the sun rose. Who would have thought that Lin Yi was not at home last night? As the dignified senior brother who was in charge of the inner sanctum, he had to wait outside for 4 hours. This could be considered as a strange anecdote. "Oh, does senior brother Jia need something from me? Come this way, please." Lin Yi quickly invited Jia Mufan into his residence. "Junior brother Lin, you're the most dazzling genius of our Blue Cloud Pavilion. You've been gone for so long. As your senior brother, it's only right for me to come and take a look. What do you think?" Jia Mufan smiled. In fact, with Lin Yi's current strength and status, it was impossible for him to win. When Jia Mufan found out that he had returned, especially after learning that he had crippled a mid-stage nascent soul cultivator with one move, he had planned to rush over as soon as possible yesterday. However, Lin Yi and the others were busy with the gathering. Moreover, they hadn't sent him an invitation, so he had tactfully postponed it until today. "I've troubled you, senior brother Jia. My mission this time was delayed because you helped me cancel it. Moreover, senior brother Liu and senior brother Ku also said that when they had a conflict with Ma Daoqiang, it was all thanks to senior brother Jia's help. I'll remember this favor on their behalf," Lin Yi said seriously. As he spoke, Lin Yi brewed some spiritual tea. Although it wasn't as professional as Shanghai Laner's, and it wasn't a rare spiritual tea like Liu Bianren's, it was still a high-grade spiritual tea. It was refreshing to drink. Jia Mufan shook his head. "Junior brother Lin, you're exaggerating. Liu Bianren and the others are your senior brothers, but they're also my junior brothers. Since I happened to come across this matter, I naturally had to step in and stop it. Otherwise, as the senior brother in charge of the inner sect, I'll be labeled as an incompetent person. No matter what, I have to thank you, senior brother Jia. It's Blue Cloud Pavilion's fortune to have an inner sect steward like you as our senior brother." Lin Yi smiled. There were only a few people in the entire Blue Cloud Pavilion's upper echelons that he liked, and Jia Mufan was one of them. "Junior brother Lin, based on what you've said, I'll do my best in the future." Jia Mufan laughed. "Speaking of which, junior brother Lin, what do you plan to do next?" "Plans?" Lin Yi looked at Jia Mufan in confusion. "I mean, are you interested in taking up a position like the inner sect steward's second senior brother or something? After all, with great power comes great responsibility," Jia Mufan said meaningfully. "Inner sect steward's second senior brother?" Lin Yi was stunned when he heard that. He asked curiously, "Isn't that Ma Daoqiang's position? He's not suitable." Jia Mufan said straightforwardly, "Before you came back, no one could object to him taking this position. But now, how can he still have the face to continue taking this position?" He retreated? Lin Yi immediately understood. This was actually the same as when he fought for the inner sect's #1 residence. Up until now, he didn't see the Blue Cloud Pavilion's upper echelons come out to fart. They all pretended to be deaf and mute about it. Those so-called upper echelons of Blue Cloud Pavilion who supported Ma Daoqiang had probably changed their stance after learning about what happened yesterday. They were really fence-sitters. To tell you the truth, I made a proposal to the Blue Cloud Pavilion's Elders Guild yesterday to let junior brother Lin be the intersect steward's second senior brother. In the end, the Elders Guild unanimously approved it. Jia Mufan's tone carried a trace of unconcealable sarcasm. Recalling the behavior of those Blue Cloud Pavilion elders at that time, they were really clowns. They were the ones who jumped up and down to take up the position. Now, they were also the ones who threw stones at Lin when he was down. With such a group of people occupying the upper echelons, it would be really intolerable if the Blue Cloud Pavilion could still prosper. Lin was speechless when he heard that. These people took advantage of his absence to snatch the #1 residence. He hadn't even settled the score with them yet, but they were already so eager to be fence-sitters. Not bad. Although I know that letting junior brother Lin take this position is definitely a waste of your talent. With your ability, this is also a springboard for transition, Piao Tianwen said. Chapter 46-26. You'll be able to soar through the skies in the future, and this step is just for experience. What do you think, junior brother Lin? Jia Mufan saw that Lin didn't seem interested and decided to take the role of persuader. I appreciate senior brother Jia's good intentions. I heard that Xiao Ran was able to become the second senior brother of the Outer Court Steward because of senior brother Jia's efforts. You have done your best for all of us, and I am extremely grateful. Lin thanked him sincerely. Then he shook his head and said, but I think I'd better forget about being the second senior brother in charge of the intersect. You should know that I don't really like these things. It's too troublesome to be entangled with mundane affairs. Lin had a very clear goal for his future development. Moreover, his vision had never been limited to Blue Cloud Pavilion. Although the position of the second senior brother in charge of the intersect seemed to be good, there would definitely be all kinds of trivial matters. At that time, a lot of energy would be wasted. If he had the time, he might as well focus on his cultivation. I understand. But this is actually the pavilion master's idea. It's not good for me to refuse directly. Otherwise, it would seem that there's some conflict between me and junior brother Lin, Jia Mufan said with a bitter smile. I see, but I really don't have this intention. Lin paused and then suggested, as far as I know, although senior brother Lu Bianren's strength is a little weak, he's still a senior in Blue Cloud Pavilion with a lot of experience. Moreover, he's experienced in various important positions. As far as I know, he's going to have a breakthrough soon. Why don't you consider him? This, Jia Mufan was a little hesitant. Lu Bianren's qualifications were indeed not bad. However, with his current strength, he obviously did not meet the requirements to be the second senior brother in charge of the intersect. Any intersect disciple was in the Golden Core stage. In theory, to be the second senior brother in charge of the intersect, one had to be at least in the late Golden Core stage. However, Lu Bianren was only in the middle Golden Core stage. Even if he was about to make a breakthrough, he was only at the peak of the middle Golden Core stage. He was still a long way from reaching the minimum threshold. Given Lin Yi's current strength and status, it was impossible for him to win. If the position of second senior brother of the Inner Court Steward fell into his hands, no one would dare to say anything. However, if it was Lu Bianren, perhaps the entire Blue Cloud Pavilion Elders Guild would be in an uproar, not to mention those ambitious disciples. However, since this was Lin Yi's intention, Jia Mufan couldn't refuse directly. He could only say, all right, then I'll report this matter to Pavilion Master Yu and put Lu Bianren on the list of key disciples to be groomed. The position of second senior brother can be reserved for him. But before that, junior brother Lin needs you to make the transition, because only after you step down from this position can you nominate Lu Bianren. That way, you can stop everyone's mouths and prevent junior brother Lu from suffering too much resistance. All right, Lin thought about it and agreed. He knew that this matter was a little difficult. Even if Lu Bianren was listed as a candidate, if he didn't hold the position in his hands first and allowed someone else to snatch it away, Lu Bianren wouldn't give up the position in the future. If that happened, Lu Bianren wouldn't know how long he would have to wait. Jia Mufan heaved a sigh of relief. If Lin, he didn't want to be the second senior brother of the inner court steward, it wouldn't matter if he couldn't complete the orders of Yu Zhenyang and the Blue Cloud Pavilion Elders Guild. The key was that he would be on tenterhooks. What if the reason why Lin, he didn't like the second senior brother of the inner court steward was because he liked the eldest senior brother of the inner court steward? Jia Mufan wasn't afraid of others, but he really didn't have the slightest confidence when facing a super genius like Lin Yi. This was the next Ram Jia. No matter how pretentious Jia Mufan was, he wouldn't be able to stop Lin Yi's footsteps. Junior brother Lin, you don't like to be entangled in miscellaneous matters. Actually, you don't have to worry about this. You can leave all the miscellaneous matters to me. As for junior brother Lin, you can stay the same as before. There shouldn't be a problem, right? Jia Mufan said with a smile. Then I'll have to trouble senior brother Jia. Lin Yi nodded. Haha, it's no trouble at all. I've always been a workaholic. I used to be the second senior brother of the inner court steward for a long time. These matters are already a walk in the park for me. Jia Mufan smiled and said frankly, actually, it's a blessing for me that junior brother Lin is willing to let go. You should know that a big reason for setting up the position of the second senior brother of the inner court steward is to check and balance me, the eldest senior brother of the inner court steward. Previously, letting an arrogant person like Ma Daiqiang sit on that position really gave me a headache. When Lin Yi heard that, he immediately laughed. Ma Daiqiang was a person who thought highly of himself. Perhaps he didn't even take Jia Mufan seriously from the start. With such a person going against him in everything, especially when Jia Mufan was the highly anticipated rookie king, no one in Jia Mufan's position would feel good no matter who it was. However, Lin Yi could also see that Jia Mufan was quite obsessed with power, but he didn't care about it all. It could be said that they were two extremes, but he didn't have any ill feelings towards Jia Mufan because of this. Jia Mufan was actually very good at conducting himself. It wasn't a bad thing for Lin Yi to cooperate with him. It was a pleasant cooperation. After talking about business, Jia Mufan chatted for a while and then got up to leave. Lin Yi politely sent him out and then began his closed-door training. This time, the closed-door training was not for cultivation, but purely for refining elixirs. Not only was the Tiandan Pavilion in urgent need of elixirs, but even the people around Lin Yi also needed it. For example, Lu Bianren was indeed on the verge of breaking through, but without the help of the Jindan Golden Elixir, who knew how long he would be stuck in the bottleneck. With previous experience, refining Jindan Golden Elixir and some other elixirs, even the Gathering Soul Golden Elixir, was already a piece of cake for Lin Yi. In 5 days, the total number of various elixirs produced finally reached 3 digits, and more than 80% of them were of the best quality. He couldn't help but sigh. The magic pesticide cauldron was really a magical tool for refining elixirs. After finishing the closed-door training, Lin Yi immediately gathered Lu Bianren and the others together. In public, he distributed some elixirs to Lu Bianren for safekeeping. After all, he was the most powerful among them and had always been the most reliable. Lin Yi decided to let Lu Bianren distribute these elixirs on time according to their needs. Otherwise, if they were directly distributed to each of them, with Xiao Hongsai's impatience, she might turn around and eat them directly. In fact, the reason why Lin Yi did this was that he had learned a lesson. In the past 2 years, he hadn't heard from anyone in the South Island, so everyone could only rely on themselves. Although their strength was much faster than that of ordinary people, they still lacked the help of elixirs after all. Chapter 46-27. Especially the best quality elixirs that couldn't be bought on the market, which caused the improvement of everyone's strength to be far less obvious than Lin Yi had expected. With everyone's qualifications, if Lin Yi was here in the past 2 years, Xiao Ran and the others would probably have been masters of the Golden Core stage. How could they still be lingering in the foundation establishment stage like now? Lin Yi himself was already at the peak of the early nascent soul stage, and the gap in strength was too big. Not only could these little brothers not be his right-hand men, but they would also become a burden. So, no matter what, Lin, he had to think of a way to raise everyone's strength as soon as possible. And one of the things he had to do was to ensure a sufficient supply of elixirs. Even when Lin wasn't here, this couldn't be cut off. After arranging everyone, the next thing Lin he had to do was to go to Zhongdao. Although the elixirs could be sent by Hong Zhong, Lin he felt that it was necessary to go in person. On one hand, he might have the opportunity to see Zhang Liju, and on the other hand, it was time to see Tian Chan and Sydney. After making up his mind, Lin he first went to the Hong's Chamber of Commerce and asked Hong Zhong to send the elixirs first. At the same time, he asked for a Chamber of Commerce pass. With this thing, flying spirit beasts could take off and land at the Zhongdao Pier. Although they still couldn't enter the sky above Zhongdao, it was much more convenient. After coming out of the Hong's Chamber of Commerce, Lin he planned to go to the Spirit Beast Farm. This was the place where the 3 pavilions specially trained spirit beasts. Now, the spirit bird had become the overlord of this Spirit Beast Farm, and its life was quite comfortable. Although it didn't have a strong racial talent, it couldn't stand its high level. There were only a few spirit beasts of the nascent soul stage in the entire North Island Spirit Beast Farm. If any spirit beast dared to cause trouble for it, it could use its speed to make the other party dizzy. Who could afford to provoke it? But before that, Lin he had to go to see Laner first to say goodbye to her, and at the same time, he had to give her the elixirs he had just refined. After all, she was also one of his people. It was her business if she had a good background, but Lin he couldn't leave her out of it. However, what Lin did not expect was that he would meet Laner on the way. She smiled and said hello from afar. Hey, what a coincidence. I was just about to look for you. Hee, I was just about to look for you. Shangguan Laner was overjoyed when she saw Lin Yi. She skipped over and couldn't hide the joy on her face. Little junior brother, you're going to work again. Work? Why? Lin Yi was stunned. Have you forgotten what your position is? Shangguan Laner rolled her eyes at him. Position. The second senior brother in charge of the Blue Cloud Pavilion's inner court? Lin Yi asked curiously. What? You're the Island Flower's personal expert. Have you forgotten? Shangguan Laner pouted. Puff. Lin Yi burst into laughter. Then he remembered that when Ning Shuefei came to the North Island, Shanghai Tianhua had given him the position of reception messenger. To put it bluntly, he was the 2 women's personal bodyguard. But this thing had passed. It was almost 2 years ago. Did this temporary position, which was obviously a joke, still count? Well, little junior brother, pack up quickly and follow me to West Island to protect the flower. Shangguan Laner couldn't wait to announce. West Island? Protect the flower? Lin he was more and more confused. Yes, it's Ning Shuefei's birthday soon. Shangguan Laner said excitedly, and then complained, Because of you. I didn't hear from her before. I didn't go to her birthday last year, but I have to go this year. Little junior brother, you're back. Hee, God is helping me. So that's how it is. Well, I have nothing to pack. When are we leaving? Lin he immediately nodded and agreed. He had a good relationship with Ning Shuefei. Since Shanghai Laner had mentioned it, it didn't matter if he agreed. Anyway, there was nothing urgent in Middle Island for the time being. He could go there after coming back from West Island. If it was just a birthday party, it shouldn't take too much time. It's today. After Shanghai Laner finished speaking, she took Lin Yi to Hualan House. Lin Yi had nothing to pack, but she was different. She had prepared a lot of birthday gifts for Ning Shuefei, not to mention a lot of her own things. Of course, these things needed to be carried by Lin Yi, a master of protecting the flower. When they arrived at Hualan House, Lin Yi could only do the hard work helplessly. When Shanghai Tianhua learned that Lin Yi was willing to protect her, he certainly had no objection. He just smiled and said a few words, then ran to the study to write, as if he was not worried about his granddaughter going to West Island at all. Lin Yi couldn't help but feel strange. Did he have 100% trust in him, or did he arrange other means of protection? Shanghai Laner was the little princess of North Island. If she went to West Island with only him to protect her, it didn't seem right, right? It wasn't until Shanghai Laner said goodbye to Shanghai Tianhua that Shanghai Tianhua solved Lin Yi's doubts. This time, Shanghai Laner's accompanying master, Although he was the only one on the surface, there were two extremely powerful figures in both strength and status. One of them was Shanghai Tianhua's trusted subordinate, Lan Tiefu, the eldest senior brother in charge of the inner core of Soaring Pavilion. The other one was quite familiar to Lin Yi, Ramjia, the master of law enforcement hall. Although there were only 3 people on the surface and in the dark, and they looked very weak, any one of them was a powerful figure who could make the whole 3 pavilions of North Island tremble, especially Ramjia, who was recognized as a person who would definitely reach the top of North Island in the future. No wonder Shanghai Tianhua was so at ease. With the protection of the 3 of them, if Shanghai Laner could still have an accident, it could only prove one thing. A force was going to wage a full-scale war against North Island. Of course, this kind of thing was impossible. Although the 3 pavilions of North Island had never been strong, they dominated an island after all. No matter how powerful the force was, if they wanted to challenge it, they had to think it over first. After saying goodbye to Shanghai Tianhua, they immediately set off from Walanju and went to the pier of North Island. Shanghai Laner walked in the front, her steps light and cheerful, followed by little Curly Bear, who dragged a giant pair of scissors and looked around unkindly from time to time, looking like a loyal lackey protecting his master. The last one was Lin Yi, who looked helpless, with all kinds of bags piled up into a hill. Looking at his miserable condition, he was not a master of flower protection, but a ready-made free coolie. As for the other 2 bodyguards, they'd said that they'd be protecting Lin Yi from the shadows, and naturally wouldn't appear in sight. Otherwise, Lin Yi's life would have been a little easier. At least he'd have 2 more bags to carry. Chapter 46-28. After a while, 2 people and 1 pet finally arrived at the pier of the North Island. Looking at the huge treasure ship docked in front of them, Lin Yi couldn't help but gasp. Although he had seen the treasure ship of the Morning Star Academy of the East Continent in the sea area of the South Continent before, it was the first time for him to see it at such a close distance. No matter how strong he was, he would inevitably feel shocked when he saw this giant on the sea. The huge treasure ship in front of him gave Lin Yi the feeling that it was not inferior to the aircraft carriers in the secular world that easily weighed tens of thousands of tons. But it was different. The whole treasure ship was integrated. Although there was no technological civilization, the design and craftsmanship were obviously better. He had to sigh that the former powerful blacksmiths of the Heaven Stage Island were really ingenious. When Lin Yi and Shanghai Laner arrived, the pier of the North Island was busy. Because the huge treasure ship was docked, other ships couldn't get close at all. People could only watch from a distance for the time being, watching the disciples of the 3 pavilions moving things to the huge treasure ship one after another, whispering to each other. This time, they used the huge treasure ship to travel to the West Island, of course, not only for Shanghai Laner. Going to Ning Shuifei's birthday party was at most an excuse, but the main purpose was to strengthen the communication between the North Island and the West Island. Although no heavyweight big shots were sent, the gifts arrived before they arrived. The things that were being moved onto the giant treasure ship were all precious gifts. Not only did they represent the entire 3 pavilions of the North Island, but also almost all the high-level officials of the 3 pavilions had their own expressions. The giant treasure ship was filled with gifts for the island master of West Island and Ning Shuifei. The North and the West Islands had always been on good terms, and the high-level officials of the 2 islands generally had a good relationship. This time, not only did Shangwan Tianhua and the other big shots prepare gifts, even the extremely mysterious North Island Island Lord, who had been in closed-door cultivation all this time, was not left behind. He had specially asked someone to bring a generous gift. It seems that there are a lot of people going to the West Island this time. Lin Yi was slightly stunned when he saw this scene. He thought it was just to accompany Shanghai Laner to a birthday party, but he didn't expect that the situation in front of him was clearly sending a delegation, with at least 100 people. But when he thought about it carefully, it wasn't strange because merely the number of people that this enormous treasure vessel could carry was absolutely no less than 3 digits. It was the first time for Lin Yi to board a giant treasure ship, but Laner, who was beside him, was very familiar with it. There was even a special room on the ship for her. Lin Yi's room was right next to hers. They were separated by a door, and when the door was opened, it was directly connected to the suite. If she wanted to visit, she didn't even need to walk through the corridor. After putting down the small mountain of gifts, Lin Yi did not stay in the room. Instead, he prepared to walk around. He had to familiarize himself with the structure of a ship first. Otherwise, he would be caught off guard if he were to encounter an accident midway. Of course, Shangwan Laner and Little Curly Bear would not be idle. Since Lin Yi wanted to walk around, they were naturally happy to accompany him. Shangwan Laner simply became a tour guide for Lin Yi. She knew a little bit about the various structures and related uses of the giant treasure ship. After a tour, it was enough for Lin Yi to have a preliminary understanding of the giant treasure ship. Uncanny workmanship. The forger who can make such a treasure ship is absolutely an unparalleled genius in the world. After a tour, Lin Yi kept praising it, and, at the same time, he couldn't help but think of the King of Rags. He could see that this guy's talent in forging was also extraordinary. If he could accumulate enough experience, it was not impossible for him to reach such a height in the future. While talking and laughing, Lin Yi and Shangwan Laner returned to the original place where they boarded the ship. At this time, the goods on the dock were almost moved, and all the people who were going to West Island were also in their places. They were ready to set sail immediately. The last group of people came from the end of the cloud climbing ladder. Lin Yi suddenly found that there was a deliberately empty circle in the middle. After taking a closer look, his heart suddenly skipped a beat. There were two people in the middle. Although one of them was dressed in black, and there was nothing unusual about his behavior, and he didn't even say a word from beginning to end, he still shone brightly. This was Ram Jia, the first person of a new generation in the North Island. Inside the empty circle, there was another person besides Gong Yangjia. This person was dressed in a large blue robe from head to toe. From his appearance, he looked to be a youth that was less than 30 years old. However, the temperament that leaked out from between his brows was much more peaceful than Gong Yangjia's. If Gong Yangjia was said to be proud and aloof, pushing people thousands of miles away, then this person was far from making people shrink back at the sight of him. Rather than saying that this person was peaceful, it would be better to say that he was ordinary. In a crowd, it would be very difficult to attract attention. But even so, the people around him consciously made way for him and gave him treatment, no less than that of Ram Jia. This was Lan Tiefu, the eldest senior brother who was in charge of the inner core of Soaring Sky Pavilion. Seeing him for the first time, Lin Yi could not help but look at him a few more times curiously. Lan Tiefu occupied such a key core position, which was enough to show that his strength must be extraordinary, and he should not be much worse than Ram Jia. The position of the eldest senior brother who was in charge of the inner core of Soaring Sky Pavilion was basically the highest level among the disciples of the three pavilions, and it could not be much worse. While Lin Yi was looking at Ram Jia and Lan Tiefu, the two of them also looked at Lin Yi in unison, but then they withdrew their eyes with a serious and silent expression, as if these things in front of them had nothing to do with them. After a while, they disappeared in the crowd without a trace. Didn't they say that they're protecting me in secret? Why have they appeared so openly? Lin Yi couldn't help but murmur. The two weren't showing off at all, but from the looks of the people around them, it was obvious that everyone knew that they were on the boat already, and that they'd already been noticed by the people with ulterior motives. Hee, the two of them have always been like this. Even if they're asked to do things secretly, they will never deliberately hide their tracks. Being sneaky is not their style. Little junior brother, don't think that senior brother Lon is as cold as senior brother Ram. In fact, his arrogance is no less than senior brother Ram's. This is what my grandfather said. Shangwan Lan explained. I see. Lin Yi could not help but laugh when he heard that, but it was not incomprehensible. Whether it was Ram Jia or Lan Tiefu, they were dragons and phoenixes among men. Their arrogance came from their strong self-confidence, so it was naturally not strange for them to act like this. While he was trying to figure out Ram Jia and Lan Tiefu, Lenny suddenly caught a glimpse of two familiar figures from the corner of his eye. When he saw them clearly, he immediately curled his lips. It was actually that idiot Su Lingchong, accompanied by the lackey Kong Mingming. What are they doing here? Are they also going to attend Ning Xuefei's birthday banquet? Lin Yi frowned slightly. Chapter 46-29. Of course not. Fei Fei's birthday party is not for such an annoying person to attend. Shangwan Laner pouted with a look of disgust. She had never liked hypocritical and despicable people like Su Lingchong. Especially after the incident at her birthday party, she hated this guy even more. Q0. Not only Shangwan Laner, but even the little curly bear made a face at Su Lingchong with disdain when it saw him. Then it dragged its huge scissors and rushed over. This little guy thought that the last time was not clean enough, so it wanted to use the same trick again. When he saw Lin Yi and Shangwan Laner standing together from afar, Su Lingchong's expression couldn't help but become slightly complicated, especially when he saw the little curly bear's pair of enormous scissors. His expression instantly became extremely unsightly. This pair of enormous scissors was the culprit that had scared him awake from his nightmares countless times. However, Su Lingchong didn't dare to do anything to the little coiled bear at this time, and he didn't dare to have a head-on conflict with Lin Yi. Even Ma Dongxiang, a master in the middle stage of the Yuanying stage, was crippled in one move. Although Su Lingchong felt that he was much stronger than Ma Dongxiang, he still couldn't help but feel nervous when facing Lin Yi. Seeing that the little curly bear was about to rush over, Su Lingchong quickly hid as far away as he could. In the blink of an eye, he and Kong Mingming disappeared into the crowd. From the looks of it, even if they had the guts, they definitely wouldn't dare to appear in front of Lin Yi for a while. The reason why Su Lingchong and Kong Mingming appeared on this ship was that they were members of the special envoy group to celebrate Ning Xuefei's birthday. But in fact, they had a secret mission. Of course, this mission did not come from the three pavilions of the North Island, but from the center. As the special envoy of the North Island, Su Lingchong couldn't leave the North Island easily, but now that he had Zhong Pingliang, who was on the same level as him, he could naturally come out to do missions. Only by doing missions. Only then would they have the chance to get credit and climb up the ranks as fast as possible, trampling Pingliang onto their feet again. As for how they managed to sneak onto the ship, with Child Su's strength and background, this kind of thing was really not difficult. There were more than 100 people in the West Island's diplomatic corps. It was easy to find an excuse to insert 2 of them into the organization. Su Lingchong did not want to have a head-on conflict with Lin Yi, especially since the mysterious man had specifically warned him not to touch Lin Yi, otherwise he would have to bear all the consequences. Under such circumstances, if Su Lingchong still dared to provoke Lin Yi, then he would have to be a fool to provoke him. As a result, his current principle was to avoid conflict with Lin Yi if he could avoid it. The further he hid, the better. It didn't matter if he was a coward, because the situation was stronger than him. In the face of Su Lingchong and Kong Mingming's behavior, Lin Yi and Shanghai Laner felt a little surprised. Although these 2 guys had suffered losses before, they had never been so sensible. Did they suddenly become clear-minded? What the hell are these 2 guys doing? Lin Yi frowned and muttered. His intuition told him that it was definitely not so simple, and there might be some reasons behind it. Kong Mingming was nothing, but Su Lingchong was not the kind of guy who would easily bow his head. Of course, Lin Yi did not spend more time to figure out Su Lingchong and Kong Mingming. His level determined his vision. If he had the time, he might as well study Ram Jie and Lan Tiefu, who were the existences that he needed to pay attention to now. All the personnel and materials were in place. With a series of low and deep horns, the giant treasure ship officially set sail. As the giant object that covered the sky and the sun slowly sailed away, the huge North Island pier was suddenly empty. All kinds of ships waiting around rushed to enter the harbor, and the North Island pier then returned to its former appearance. Standing on the deck of the treasure ship, Ding Ning felt the sea breeze that was gradually becoming stronger. Seeing the whole North Island becoming smaller and smaller, Lin, he suddenly had an inexplicable excitement of the beginning of a trip in his heart. This feeling was the same as traveling around the world on a luxury cruise in the secular world. Huge, sturdy, and comfortable, the treasure ship could be said to have all the advantages of a sea ship. In particular, it could ride the wind and waves to fight against natural obstacles, just like a moving fortress on the sea. Everything had a shortcoming, and that was speed. In fact, the speed of the treasure ship was not slower than that of other ordinary sea ships. As long as there was a steady stream of spiritual chi to replenish the energy of the magic formation, the extreme speed that it broke out could instantly kill any sea ship. At this extreme speed, ordinary sea ships would have automatically disintegrated, let alone ride the wind and waves. However, Lin, he had long been used to the speed of the spirit bird. No matter how the giant treasure ship broke out with all its strength, it obviously could not reach such an exaggerated level. The distance between the North Island and the West Island was not too far. If it was the spirit bird, with its current speed of the nascent soul realm, it would take at most one day to get there. But if it was a giant treasure ship, it would be different. Even if it sailed at full speed regardless of the cost, it would be impossible to get there without half a month. Junior brother, the sunrise on the sea is very beautiful. How about getting up early tomorrow to watch the sunrise? Shanghai Laner suddenly suggested with great interest. Watch the sunrise? Hearing this, Lin, he was stunned. He hadn't had this kind of leisure to play and relax for a long time. It was good to take the opportunity to relax, so he immediately nodded and agreed. Okay, no problem. After the two agreed, it was getting dark on the deck. After staying on the deck for a while, they returned to their respective rooms. Lin, he was busy meditating and practicing, while Shanghai Laner was resting and sleeping. It was rare for her to come out to play, so she would not be stupid to practice. Early the next morning, before Lin E, who was meditating and practicing here, got up, Shanghai Laner next door was already eagerly knocking on the door. Lin E estimated the time. It should be less than 4 o'clock, right? The two came to the deck with the little curly bear. Looking at the darkness in front of them, they couldn't even see their fingers. Lin, he was suddenly speechless. Fortunately, the guardrail of the treasure ship was high. Otherwise, they would accidentally touch the sea. He quickly sensed with his divine awareness. Wait, the rising sun will appear soon. Shanghai Laner was very excited, and even the little curly bear was jumping up and down beside her. Lin, he was really afraid that this little guy would fall into the sea. Not long after Shanghai Laner said this, as expected, the distant horizon soon turned red. Although there was only a little bit of faint red light at the beginning, this ray of light was very dazzling in the dark environment. From the moment it appeared, the red light quickly grew and soon dyed the sky red. The outline of the rising sun gradually became clearer, and it was reflected in one's eyes bit by bit. It was exuding a vigorous energy that inspired people's hearts, intoxicating them and causing them to think deeply. Chapter 4630. Looking at the beautiful scene in front of him, Lin Yi's heart completely calmed down. Unconsciously, he had a long-lost sense of security. He had experienced so many things in South State. Although he had been practicing and improving himself, Lin, he could clearly feel that there was a lingering impetuosity in his heart. In fact, it was not difficult to find the root cause. Practice was about tension and relaxation. During the 1.5 years in South State, especially after being hunted by West Mountain Sect, he had never been completely relaxed. Once nerves were tense for too long, there would always be sequelae. This was a time bomb. At first glance, it seemed inconspicuous, but might make people pay a heavy price at any time. However, even with Lin Yi's temperament, he could only suppress this impetuosity, but there was no way to completely eradicate it. Originally, after returning to North Island, Lin Yi planned to relax for a while and release his pressure. Unfortunately, Tiandan Pavilion was in urgent need of elixirs, so he could only hurry up to make elixirs. As soon as he finished making elixirs, he he was asked by Shanghai Laner to be her bodyguard. Lin thought that if he wanted to really rest and relax, he would have to wait until he came back from West Island. Unexpectedly, after watching the sunrise on a whim today, the trace of impetuosity in his heart suddenly disappeared, which was a pleasant surprise. He glanced at Shanghai Laner and the small curly bear next to him. At the moment, one person and one pet were completely intoxicated in the beautiful scenery of the rising sun. It seemed that even their eyes were about to melt. Lin smiled slightly. Enjoying the beautiful sunrise on the sea was indeed a great pleasure in life. Lin was about to enjoy it again, but he suddenly had a very unnatural feeling. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he always felt that there was a pair of eyes staring at him in the dark. But he couldn't find the owner of this gaze. Lin Yi's heart moved, and he quietly released his divine senses. With the strength of his current divine senses, it was enough to cover the whole treasure ship. However, after he carefully scanned back and forth 3 times, he suddenly found a surprising fact. However, he suddenly discovered a shocking fact. He couldn't lock onto this observer. This time Lin was shocked. He was no longer in the mood to watch the sunrise. This time, in the West Island mission, the top management of the 3 pavilions symbolically sent 3 elders, and the others were not particularly outstanding masters. There were only a few people who could completely avoid the perception of Lin Yi's divine senses. Those who could do this, at least, would not be the kind of people like Su Lingshon. Although the other party was a nascent soul stage expert, if he dared to use his spiritual sense to monitor Lin, he could pull him out and beat him up in minutes. They were only at the same level of strength, but in reality, they were not on the same level. There's no need to look. It's Ram Jia and Lan Tiefu. The ghostly thing suddenly said. What? 2 people? Lin was immediately overwhelmed with shock. He could guess that this person was probably one of the 2 of them, but he completely didn't expect that both of them would be staring at him at the same time. Moreover, he could only rely on his intuition to barely discover one of them. The powerful divine sense that he thought was useless in front of the other party. Yes, it's 2, the ghostly thing confirmed. Then which one did I sense? Lan Tiefu? Lin was stunned and speculated. In his opinion, Lan Tiefu's strength must be slightly inferior to Ram Jia's. Then the one he sensed must be him. But even so, it was not simple. This senior brother who was in charge of the inner core of Rising Sky Pavilion was really not simple, since he could completely hide from his spiritual sense. No, the one you sensed was Ram Jia. Lan Tiefu's strength is even more unfathomable, and he's even stronger than Ram Jia. The ghostly thing's tone was also a little weird. Stronger than Ram Jia? How is that possible? Lin suddenly froze. Ram Jia was a super genius appointed by Shanghai Tianhua. He was recognized as the first person of the new generation in the North Island. How could Lan Tiefu's strength be stronger than his? Wouldn't that be unworthy of his name? I also think it's a little weird, but it's the truth. It seems that the 3 major pavilions in the North Island aren't as simple as the outside world says. They're really hidden dragons and crouching tigers, the ghostly thing's side. The ghostly thing's side. Even in its eyes, Gong Yang Jia could be considered a super genius that was hard to come by in 100 years. Now, an even stronger Lan Tiefu had suddenly appeared. The foundation of such experts was truly not to be underestimated. Lin was shocked speechless. He did not expect the confidant of Shanghai Tianhua to be so strong that even Ram Jia could be suppressed by him. It could be seen that the title of the inner core of Rising Sky Pavilion was not given for nothing. Although Jiamu Fan was not simple, he was far inferior to the unfathomable Lan Tiefu. This alone was enough to see the huge gap between Rising Sky Pavilion and Blue Cloud Pavilion. Their foundations were not on the same level at all. Rising Sky Pavilion was able to dominate the North Island's overall situation purely because of its strength. Blue Cloud Pavilion could not compare. Then what's the strength of this Lan Tiefu? Lin could not help but ask curiously. No matter what, he was the second senior brother of the inner core of Blue Cloud Pavilion. In terms of position, he was also on the same level as the other party. Lin, he wanted to know the gap between him and the other party. It's meaningless even if you know. It's better not to say it. The ghost kept him in suspense. Lin, he was stunned again, and he was even more shocked. The ghost's words were very clear. He was not on the same level as the other party at all. Once he revealed Lan Tiefu's true strength, he was afraid that he would be shocked. At first, he thought that even if the other party was strong, he would not be too ridiculously strong. At most, he would be at the mysterious ascension stage. It should be known that the mysterious ascension stage was already the mainstay of the top 3 pavilions. If a senior brother of the inner core of Rising Sky Pavilion was stronger than this, then there was no point in the top management. However, the ghost's attitude was clearly telling him that Lan Tiefu's strength was not just at the mysterious ascension stage. Otherwise, there was no need to keep him in suspense. Is he as strong as you at your peak, senior? Lin, he asked cautiously. He was really shocked this time. His evaluation of Lan Tiefu had suddenly jumped to above the mountain opening stage. Could this guy be a master of the earth opening stage? Or a higher level, the sea-splitting stage? If someone said that the strength of the inner core of Rising Sky Pavilion could reach above the mountain opening stage before this, Lin Yi would definitely scoff at it. However, after personally experiencing it now, his previous understanding of the entire North Island had changed. The strength of the North Island was not as weak as the rumors said. In fact, he was simply hiding his strength. It was just that few people knew about it. Aren't you talking nonsense? If he's stronger than me, then how can I perceive him so easily? The ghost said speechlessly. Oh, Lin, he let out a breath of relief. If this thing was saying that the opponent was stronger than him, then he'd be in for a real scare. Chapter 46:31. But at the same time, he was somewhat shocked. Not only was he shocked by Lan Tiefu, but he also couldn't help but speculate about the strength of that ghostly thing. It was even stronger than Lan Tiefu. What kind of existence was that? Suppressing the wild thoughts in his mind, Lin, he was no longer in the mood to watch the sunrise. Knowing that there were 2 pairs of eyes staring at him, he suddenly felt uncomfortable, as if there were 2 powerful spirit beasts staring at him in the jungle. The invisible pressure made him breathless. However, the jade pendant didn't give off any warning, which meant that Ramjie and Lan Tiefu didn't have any malicious intentions. Perhaps they were just here to protect him in secret under the orders of Shanghai Tianhua. This was the only thing that comforted Lenny. Sailing calmly on the boundless sea, facing the same scenery on the sea, after experiencing the initial excitement, the rest of the journey became boring. Lin, he didn't mind it. He could endure for more than half a year in the sunless 5-poison swamp, let alone a voyage of half a month. But Shanghai Laner and Little Curly Bear couldn't endure it. They had nothing to do every day, so they came to find Lenny. From time to time, they would pester him to tell them about their previous experiences, treating it as listening to stories to relieve their boredom. Shanghai Laner actually wasn't that interested in Lin Yi's adventure in the South Continent. What she was really interested in was the secular world. After listening to Lin Yi talk about so many things in the secular world, she couldn't help but have an idea. One day, she must go to the secular world to have fun. Otherwise, she would only spend the rest of her life mediocre on the Heaven Stage Island. What a pity. According to the voyage schedule, the giant ship would be sailing on the sea for half a month. Apart from the first 2 days when the ship swayed back and forth, Lin Yi had almost completely turned into Shanghai Laner's storyteller. He couldn't help but sigh. This girl's interest in the secular world was really extraordinary. Even the most trivial things could make her excited for a long time, and she would chase after Lin Yi to get to the bottom of it. This situation lasted until the 10th day. Lin Yi was telling Shanghai Laner about his career as an assassin. Suddenly, a crew member came to report that there was a thick fog up ahead. I can't go any further. Lin Yi was shocked. He hurriedly brought Shanghai Laner and Little Curly Bear to the deck to check on the situation. At this moment, many people had already gathered outside. Ramjie, Lan Tiefu, and even Su Lingqiang were here. After all, being blocked by the sea fog and unable to move forward was a big matter. Although the giant treasure ship was a moving fortress on the sea, this was only relative to ordinary ships. If it was really trapped in the boundless sea, it would be impossible for it to survive. If they stayed here for too long, not only would their journey be greatly delayed, but there would also be problems with supplies. However, compared to the latter two threats, these were only minor problems. These two threats were the sea beasts and the weather. Although the giant ship would be able to safely deal with the weather 80% of the time, there was still a 20% chance that an accident would occur. Once an accident occurred, it would be a fatal crisis. If they suddenly encountered a super strong sea beast like the giant electric eel, which was above the sea-splitting stage, it would be extremely dangerous. Could the huge treasure ship still be safe and sound? The answer was probably not optimistic. Similarly, if there was extremely bad weather, it was difficult to guarantee that the giant treasure ship would not be in danger. At this moment, all the people that gathered on the deck were slightly anxious. The sea mist itself wasn't terrifying, but they were afraid of what exactly was hidden behind the dense sea mist. Was it nothing, or was it a group of extremely ferocious sea beasts, or was it a monstrous wave that was sufficient to capsize a treasured ship? Seeing Lin, Yi, and Shanghai Laner appear, everyone spontaneously surrounded them. Nominally, this envoy from West Island was led by 3 elders of the 3 pavilions, but everyone knew that they were just ceremonial officers. The strength of the 3 of them was only at the Yuanying realm. In contrast, their deterrence was even less than that of Lin Yi, the new disciple. What's more, Lin Yi was a master of flower protection personally appointed by Shanghai Tianhua. He was also the messenger who represented North Island to visit West Island this time. When there was really something that needed to be decided, when something really needed to be decided, he should be the one to make the decision. Special Envoy Lin, the route ahead is all covered by the sea fog. We can't figure out the specific situation at all. If we continue to move forward rashly, I'm afraid there will be danger. What do you think we should do? One of the elders asked on behalf of everyone. Strength was respected. As elders, they were not necessarily arrogant fools. When it was time to lower their heads, they would lower their heads more quickly than anyone else. After all, they were old and shrewd. When Lin Yi heard the words, he smiled slightly and turned to look at Ram Jia and Lan Tiefu beside him, saying, I'm just a new junior. Since Hall Master Ram and Senior Brother Lan are here, of course, it's up to them to make the decision. Everyone's eyes immediately focused on the 2 of them. Of course, the 2 of them were far above Lin Yi. What they said was naturally more convincing than what Lin Yi said. When Ram Jia and Lan Tiefu heard the words, they both glanced at Lin Yi with some unfathomable meaning in their eyes. Although they were not at the same level, what Lin Yi had done before was enough to impress them. At this time, Lin Yi behaved so tactfully, and anyone would feel good about it. However, both of them looked quite serious at the moment. The sea fog in front of them was extremely thick, and it had reached an extreme level of hindrance to the divine senses. Even experts at their level couldn't overcome it. Even if they weren't like others who couldn't use their divine senses at all, their detection range was still very limited. My divine senses can only cover a radius of 500 feet. Ramjia only said this, and then he stopped talking. Me too, Lan Tiefu said indifferently. When everyone heard this, their expressions instantly became even more nervous. A perception range of 500 feet was absolutely not enough for sailing, especially for a colossus like the enormous treasured ship. At such a distance, not to mention avoiding danger, they didn't even have the time to notice danger unless they stopped completely. This time, Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a slight headache. The perception range of the ghost's divine senses was much larger than theirs, but it was still not enough to guarantee their safety. If they continued to advance rashly, it was equivalent to gambling with the lives of the entire ship. Once something happened, it was very likely that they would be completely annihilated in the end. Since it's like this, then let's set up camp here and wait and see. Lin Yi had no choice but to make a decision. Everyone nodded. This was a method that they had no other choice. Although staying on the sea like this could also be dangerous, it was better to stay still than to move. In this way, no matter what unpredictable situation occurred, at least they would have some time to react. However, the sea is full of danger. Even if we set up camp here, we can't let down our guard. We must strengthen our guard, Lin Yi continued. Chapter 4632. Yes, Special Envoy Lin is right. We can't let our guard down at this time. I suggest we gather all the inner court disciples on the ship and divide them into 2 teams to take turns patrolling, an elder said. Everyone nodded in agreement. Although the defensive ability of the huge ship was unparalleled, they didn't mind having an extra layer of protection. Maybe they could escape this disaster. Okay, but if it's just ordinary inner court disciples patrolling, I'm afraid the effect won't be great. After all, the divine sense of Golden Core experts is almost completely blocked by the sea mist. It's best to have a top-notch expert on guard. Only then can we be absolutely safe. Lin Yi said, then turned to Ram Jie and Lan Tiefu. Hall Leader Ram, Senior Brother Lan, you two are the most powerful people on the ship. This matter concerns the safety of the whole ship, so I can only ask you two to take turns patrolling. Okay. Ram Jie and Lan Tiefu nodded in agreement at the same time. At this time, they had no reason to refuse. Besides, if something really happened to the ship, they would also suffer. In this endless sea, no matter how powerful they were, it was useless. With these 2 great experts on guard, everyone could more or less feel relieved. However, everyone knew that it was only a psychological comfort. The perception range of 500 feet was better than nothing. Fortunately, this was a moving fortress on the sea. As long as there were no major accidents, there shouldn't be any problems. 7 is not equal to the weather was unpredictable. The only danger that could be detected with divine sense was sea beasts. The huge ship's defensive array was enough to block most of the attacks from sea beasts. At the same time, it had cast a camouflage spell to deal with sea beasts. Under normal circumstances, it wouldn't be attacked by sea beasts. After a day of silence, as expected, no sea beasts came to harass them. However, in the evening, there was a sudden change. A ship is coming. Ram Jie, who was leaning on the railing of the deck, suddenly tensed up. His originally somewhat lazy temperament changed. He immediately became overbearing and cold, making people not dare to approach him. At this time, Lin Yi and the others happened to be at the side. They were all shocked when they heard this. This was the deep sea area. Ordinary ships didn't dare to come here at all. Otherwise, they would easily be buried in the sea. Could it be that the other party was also a treasure ship? It's not a treasure ship. They're experts on the other party's ship. I don't know how they found out. But looking at the direction, they are indeed coming for us. Lan Tiefu appeared immediately. There were only 2 possibilities for an ordinary ship to appear in such a deep-sea area. The other party was either an idiot or a bold person with great skills. Judging from the current situation, it was most likely the latter. Everyone's faces turned pale with fright, each and every one of them fearful and uneasy. That was the thought that almost everyone shared at this moment. Although they had experts like Ram Jie and Lan Tiefu with them, the other party dared to appear here in an ordinary ship and could even detect them through the thick fog. This meant that he was definitely not a good person. Little junior brother, what should we do now? Shanghai Laner couldn't help but feel a little nervous as she turned to ask Lin Yi. Since the other party could be sensed by Ram Jie and Lan Tiefu, it meant that the other party was less than 100 meters away from him. If he continued to stay here without moving, he would arrive in the blink of an eye. At this time, there was no room for hesitation. If it's a blessing, it's not a curse. If it's a curse, it's unavoidable. Although the opponent is powerful, it will only be more dangerous if we flee rashly. Better to stay put than to move. Lan Tiefu said decisively. Everyone was still looking at Lin Yi in fear. With Lan Tiefu's strength, of course, he didn't need to be afraid of any powerful opponent, but the others were. This time, they were on a diplomatic mission to West Island. To put it bluntly, They were here to have fun and relax. Who would want to lose their lives in this endless sea? Lin, he couldn't help but frown when he heard that. Lan Tiefu's words were not unreasonable, but the problem was that the existence on the other party's ship was tricky even for him and Ramjia. What kind of expert was this? Lin, he was pondering and weighing the pros and cons. At this time, the ghostly voice suddenly sounded in the depths of his mind. Don't think about it anymore. The person on the other ship is not a human. Quack. Not a human. Could it be a ghost? Lin, he subconsciously felt a chill down his spine. Could this be the legendary ghost ship? The world was big and full of strange things. In the past, Lin, he didn't believe in these things. But as his strength and vision grew, he didn't find these unimaginable existences strange anymore. Fuck, if it's not a human, then it's a ghost? When did your brain become so simple? The ghostly thing was instantly choked and said speechlessly, "It's a spirit beast." No wonder. Hearing that, Lenny couldn't help but be shocked. No wonder it dared to come to the deep sea with only an ordinary ship. No wonder it could penetrate the sea fog to explore here. It turned out that it was a spirit beast. During the previous trip to South Island, Lin, he had deeply experienced the strength of the spirit beast clan. Human cultivators didn't dare to travel in the sea without a treasure ship, but might not be the case for the powerful spirit beast clan. The Five Poisons flood dragon dared to fight with the giant electric eel in the sea. Even though these spirit beasts were far less powerful than the Five Poisons flood dragon, existences like the giant electric eel were not everywhere, and ordinary sea beasts might not be able to do anything to them. Moreover, there was miasma everywhere on South Island, which was even more terrible than sea fog. Not only did it affect the perception of divine senses, but it was also extremely toxic. Anyone who traveled under the miasma all year round would not be able to face the sea fog. Senior, what do you think we should do? Lenny had no choice but to ask the ghostly thing. He couldn't tell Ramjia, Lan Tiefu, and the others about this, or he would be suspected. Moreover, they didn't know as much about the Spirit Beast clan as the ghostly thing, the former Azure Dragon Elder. Even if he asked them, they wouldn't be able to tell him. It's useless even if you ask me about this. I haven't been an elder for so long. How would I know the specific situation of the Spirit Beast clan now? The ghostly thing laughed bitterly and said helplessly, according to the rules set by the previous Spirit Beast King, the Spirit Beast clan and the Sea Beast clan should mind their own business. Therefore, unless something serious happened, no Spirit Beast was allowed to go into the sea. Now that the Vermilion Bird is in charge, and after such a long period of chaos, this rule has long been thrown to the back of their minds. Maybe some spirit beasts have come out to be pirates. Spirit beast pirates? Lin Yi's eyelids twitched involuntarily, and his expression was a little strange. The term spirit beast pirates always sounded weird, but in reality, spirit beast pirates were definitely much more terrifying than human pirates. Powerful human experts had a lot of connections, and they could live a very comfortable life by choosing any one of them. Therefore, they generally wouldn't come out to be pirates. However, spirit beasts were different. It was very difficult for them to be accepted by human society. Once the Spirit Beast clan on South Island was not accepted, they basically had no other way out but to be pirates. Chapter 46:33. Lin, he suddenly realized that these spirit beasts had probably become pirates because they had offended the Vermilion Bird. Now that the Vermilion Bird was in power, they had no choice but to escape and become pirates if they wanted to live. While Lin, he was conversing with a ghost, everyone else was also arguing fiercely. Everyone knew that Lan Tiefu's words made sense, but the premise was that they had to be strong enough. What if the other party was much stronger than them? Wouldn't they just be waiting for death if they continued to stay here? However, everyone knew that it was useless no matter how they argued. The decision ultimately rested with Lin Yi, the special envoy. Unless they were prepared to betray the three northern pavilions, Lin Yi's words had to carry enormous weight. Even Ramjia and Lan Tiefu could not change his mind. After hearing the ghost's words, Lin Yi quickly weighed the pros and cons in his mind before deciding. Let's escape by ship. The argument immediately died down. Everyone was stunned when they heard that, looking at Lin Yi in shock. Even those who were thinking of retreating did not expect Lin Yi to make such a decision. No, we're too close to each other. We'll only expose ourselves if we escape now. Besides, there's fog everywhere. We can't even figure out what's going on, so how can we escape? Lan Tiefu immediately objected. At the side, Ram Jia frowned slightly and did not say anything. Meanwhile, most of the people present nodded in agreement. Although this was not a battlefield, escaping at the last minute was not a wise choice no matter how one looked at it. It was equivalent to completely handing the initiative to the other party, making it difficult for them to retaliate. This would only encourage the other party's arrogance and make them even more unbridled, which would only worsen the outcome. More importantly, the fog was still there. If they knew the way out, it was not unacceptable to escape. After all, they could shake off the other party as long as they were fast enough. However, the fog was so thick that they did not even dare to move before. Moreover, they had to escape at full speed now. Wasn't that gambling with their lives? Since it was also a gamble, rather than dying on the sea without knowing the reason, it was better to fight the other party openly. Even if he died, he would at least die knowing the reason. Seeing that everyone had different reactions, Shengwan Lan suddenly stood up and said, "All of you, shut up. Little junior brother is the special envoy appointed by Grandpa. He has the final say on how this ship goes. If anyone dares to make irresponsible remarks and disturb him, he will be punished. It will be regarded as a betrayal of the 3 pavilions of the North Island." No one dared to utter a word. Even Lan Tiefu, who had taken the lead in objecting, chose to remain silent after seeing Shangwan Laner's expression. After all, he was Shanghai Tianhua's trusted aide, and he couldn't possibly take the lead in opposing Shangwan Laner, the princess of the Soaring Pavilion. Seeing everyone's reaction, Lin Yi could not help but look at Shanghai Laner in surprise. Although this lass was usually innocent and unaffected, she really had some courage at this critical moment. He could vaguely see some of Shanghai Tianhua's power. After all, he had been influenced by her since young. This little senior sister was not simple. The situation was urgent, and there was no room for delay. Seeing that everyone had tactfully shut up, Lin immediately took the lead and entered the cockpit without saying anything. Everyone followed him in, nervously watching how he was going to deal with the situation. The cockpit of this huge treasure ship was completely different from ordinary ships. In this huge space, there were more than 10 control posts, each of which was specialized in controlling a set of spirit arrays. Only specially trained professionals could operate it. "I'll do it." Lin Yi suddenly walked to the control post in the middle and gestured for the helmsman to step aside. Seeing this, everyone was instantly stunned. This guy was actually going to take the helm himself. This was not a joke. To take the helm of a huge treasure ship, one must go through very strict professional training in advance. Otherwise, even the experienced helmsman would be blinded. Both were ships, but a huge treasure ship and an ordinary ship were completely different things. Special Envoy Lin, this is different from a ship, the helmsman said weakly. "I know, so I'll leave the other controls to you guys. I'll only control the direction. From now on, just listen to my orders." Lin Yi took over the control post. "Oh, okay." Seeing that Lin Yi was so determined, although the helmsman was not confident, he could only quickly step aside. Otherwise, if they were in a stalemate, not only would it delay the opportunity, if the other party got angry and accused them of betraying the North Island, they would be dead meat. The helmsman was anxious, and the others were also on edge. However, at this time, they did not dare to say anything. "The other party is still 10 feet away from us." Gong Yangjia's voice suddenly resounded, giving everyone a fright. They could already see the outline of the ship from a distance of 10 feet. If there was no defensive array outside the ship, the other party could easily jump off the ship and come over. Lin Yi did not pay attention to him. He felt the control lever calmly and then said in a deep voice, "Full speed." The operators of the various posts were shocked when they heard this. Unlike ordinary ships, which mainly relied on the sea breeze to move, this treasured ship's power came from the formation. As long as there was a sufficient supply of spiritual energy, its speed could be increased to the limit in just a few breaths of time. This was an advantage that no other ship could compare to. However, the sea fog was so thick that they could not even tell whether it was the island or the sea in front of them, let alone the reefs. Wasn't doing this courting death. However, Lin Yi's tone was strict, and everyone did not dare to hesitate. They quickly turned the power of the array to the maximum, and then they all staggered. The huge treasure ship's strong acceleration was not a joke. At this moment, Lin Yi was staring at the sea in front of him with a serious expression. He obviously could not see anything from 10 feet away, but he still acted as if he was serious. After a moment, as if something had happened, he suddenly turned sharply to the left. "No, we can't go like this. There are large reefs in front of us. We can't go this way. It's too dangerous." Seeing this, the helmsman was suddenly shocked. He was the helmsman on the previous trips to West Island, so he had some understanding of this route. With the treasure ship's strength, although it was not afraid of ordinary reefs, if there were too many reefs, it would still cause irreversible damage to the treasure ship. Especially at this extreme speed, it was very likely that even the protective array could not withstand it and would directly break. The helmsman was terrified, and the rest of the crew followed suit. Lin Yi seemed calm on the surface, but he was actually a madman. They couldn't help but feel like they'd boarded a pirate ship. They wouldn't all die in his hands, would they? Chapter 4634. Originally, they might have only a slim chance of survival, but if someone caused more trouble, they would really die. Everyone was afraid because they did not know the details. If they knew that Lin Yi had a jade pendant that could warn them in advance, they would not be so anxious. Lin Yi's current method was the same as when he was in the South Continent's escort agency festival, which was to rely on the jade pendant to warn them and control the direction. Bang! As they advanced, they suddenly heard a slight collision sound. Just as the helmsman had expected, they had clearly hit a reef. Everyone immediately became alert. If it really was a large reef, then it would really be a big problem. However, what happened next was beyond everyone's expectations. Although they could hear this kind of slight collision sound every once in a while, it was far less intense than they had imagined. If it was only this degree, it was completely within the range of the giant treasure ship's tolerance. How is this possible? Not only the helmsman, but everyone present was also stunned, including Ram Jia and Lan Tiefu. They looked at Lin Yi with disbelief in their eyes. This kind of thing could not be done by a normal person, unless Lin Yi's strength was far above theirs and his divine sense could penetrate the thick sea fog. But this was simply impossible. The people on the huge treasured ship were just shocked, but the spirit beast experts on the other ship were stunned. They looked at the silhouette of the treasured ship that quickly disappeared from their line of sight, and they were all dumbstruck. Wasn't it running too fast? The reason why they specifically chose to move within the sea fog was because they were afraid that the other party would run away regardless of everything. After all, the speed of any treasure ship was not comparable to that of an ordinary ship. Only when the sea fog blocked their movement could they have a chance to succeed. Putting aside the heavenly materials and earthly treasures on the ship, the value of the treasure ship alone was enough for them to live freely for a lifetime. However, they did not expect that before they even started to attack the protective formation, the other party would run away as if they had taken the wrong medicine. Moreover, it seemed that they had deliberately rushed into the reef group. What should they do? Although the sea fog had a relatively small impact on spirit beast experts, it was not to the extent that they could completely ignore it. If they sailed the ship crazily like Lin Yi, they would be in big trouble if they simply hit a few reefs and created a hole in the bottom of the ship. The group of spirit beast experts looked at each other and could only give up the chase resentfully. Although it was rare to come across a treasure ship, as long as they had enough patience, there would always be another chance. Although the spirit beast pirates were lawless, they could not do anything. However, he still cherished his life very much. Even if he was beaten to death, he wouldn't dare to risk his life like Lin Yi. Under the shroud of the sea mist, the huge treasured ship had been sailing at its top speed for 2 hours. Everyone on the ship had also been on tenterhooks for 2 hours. Especially the helmsman, who was the most proficient in maritime affairs. He was so scared that he had become numb. A layman would only be watching the show. At most, they would not understand what was going on, but in the eyes of an insider like him, Lin Yi's method was simply subverting his worldview and outlook on life. After galloping for 2 hours in the sea fog, nothing happened to the ship. There was actually such a way to drive a huge treasure ship. After another moment, the view in front of them suddenly became clear. The original visibility of a mere 100 feet suddenly became several thousand feet, and it was still getting further. The heavy sea fog soon disappeared without a trace, and the scene in front of them turned into a boundless blue sky and white clouds. "Okay, I'll leave the rest to you." Lin Yi then signaled the helmsman at the side to come and replace him. Everyone around him burst into cheers of surprise. Everyone thought that this time, even if they didn't die, they would at least lose a layer of skin. They didn't expect that after Lin Yi's actions, it would actually pass without any trouble. "Little junior brother, you're so awesome." Shangwan Laner pulled Lin Yi's arm and said happily. Even the little curly bear also danced with joy. Everyone at the side quickly made way for them. This little thing was still holding a huge pair of scissors in its hand. If they weren't careful, it might accidentally cut their family jewels. Putting everything else aside, this kid is indeed quite capable. In the corner, Su Lingxiong and Kong Mingming looked at each other and looked at Lin Yi, who was surrounded by everyone as a hero. Their eyes were filled with envy and jealousy. In fact, even Lan Tiefu, who clearly opposed it at the beginning, couldn't help but look at Lin Yi in a higher light now. He hadn't had any dealings with Lin Yi before, and all he knew about Lin Yi came from hearsay. He thought that Lin Yi was like the so-called rookie king, Ma Dongxiang, who was just a pillow with more fame than strength. He didn't expect him to actually have some skills. Not simple at all. As expected of the winner of the South Continent's escort agency Grand Gathering. This time, it's really an eye-opener for me, Ram Jia said lightly as he looked at Lin Yi. Upon hearing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but be a little surprised. Ram Jia actually knew about this. However, after thinking about it carefully, the law enforcement hall under this guy's command was not only the law enforcement agency of the 3 major pavilions of the North Island, but also an intelligence agency. Even Shanghai Tianhua knew about it, so naturally, it wouldn't be a secret in his eyes. "Hall Master Ram, you flatter me. It's just a small trick. It's not worth mentioning." Lin Yi smiled modestly. Gong Yangjia did not say anything else. After exchanging glances with Lan Tiefu, the two of them disappeared silently into the crowd. Since the crisis had been resolved, it was time for the two of them to continue carrying out their mission of protecting Shangwan Lan in secret. They could not just stand there openly. 7 days later, the giant treasure ship finally arrived at the West Island's pier. It was 2 days later than the scheduled time, because Lin Yi had taken a big detour to escape. Even so, it was much better than being trapped in the sea fog or being captured by the spirit beast pirates. Anyway, it was only 2 days late. Ning Shuefei's birthday party would be in 3 days, so the delay didn't matter. The arrival of the giant treasure ship made the originally busy West Island's pier even livelier. The pier was bustling with people, and almost everyone nearby squeezed over to watch the fun. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Lin Yi and Shanghai Laner took the lead to disembark from the treasure ship. The rest of the people disembarked in line according to their status. Only Ram Jia and Lan Tiefu disappeared. They wouldn't show up in such a public place. "Hello, Miss Shangwan. I'm Feng Lu, the special reception envoy this time. I was ordered by the island master to wait for the distinguished guests from the North Island. Thank you for your hard work." A woman in the crowd greeted. Lin Yi glanced at the woman. She also had a young face, but her appearance was ordinary. It seemed that she hadn't undergone any beauty modification. However, What shocked him was that although this woman named Feng Lu didn't reveal any master temperament, she was a master of the profound ascending stage. Chapter 4635. Not only this West Island received special envoys, but Linny also looked around and found that there were a lot of masters in West Island, no worse than the North Island. Masters of Yuanying Realm and Goldcore Realm could be seen everywhere in the crowd. Of course, there were not many masters of Xinshang Realm like Feng Lu. At least they would not be active in this kind of busy city. After a few words of greeting, Feng Lu took them to the palace of the island owner, which was the most central area of West Island. The scenery they saw along the way could be said to be the most prosperous place in West Island. The main street extended in all directions, and there were all kinds of buildings. Everywhere they passed, there were bustling markets and all kinds of high-end and luxurious large shops. Overall, he felt that West Island was no worse than Middle Island. Especially these buildings were beautiful and even better than Middle Island. After all, West Island was a gathering place for female cultivators, and women were far more persistent in the pursuit of beauty than men. This was Lin Yi's first time coming to West Island, and he was naturally very curious about this legendary camp of female cultivators. He couldn't help but look around, realizing that while there were many female cultivators here, there weren't no men at all. There were still some men in the streets and in the shops. While Lin Yi and his group were looking around, the people of West Island were also watching them. The female cultivators here were far more enthusiastic than they had imagined, and some even blew kisses to Lin Yi and his group in public. I thought West Island was a country of women, but I didn't expect that there were a lot of men here. Although there were fewer than female cultivators, it was about the same as the proportion of female cultivators in North Island. But it was reversed. Lin, he said in surprise. Little junior brother, you still don't know that men have no human rights here in West Island. Only by relying on female cultivators can you live, so don't run around, or you'll be taken home as a male servant. Shangwan Laner squinted her eyes and smiled mischievously. Huh? Male servant? Lin, he was stunned. Oh, Miss Shangwan is joking. Don't be nervous, Special Envoy Lin. Feng Lu, who was next to him, smiled and explained, but our West Island is indeed dominated by female cultivators, just like your North Island is dominated by male cultivators. Most of the powerful experts here are female cultivators. Although it's not that there aren't any male cultivators, they are very few in number. Most of the male cultivators don't have much strength, and some are even ordinary people. Therefore, they can only rely on female cultivators to survive. Then what if their strength is the same? Their status will also be higher, right? Lenny couldn't help but ask curiously. Yes, there are many things here that only female cultivators can do. There are also some high-class occasions where only female cultivators were allowed to enter. Unless the island lord personally approves a male cultivator, it doesn't matter how strong he is, Feng Lu said without hesitation. I see. Lenny nodded. After listening to these words, he had a general understanding of West Island. This was actually a women's rights society, but it was not an absolute women's rights society. In a real women's rights society, there was no room for men to stand out. But here, it was not impossible as long as one had enough strength. As long as one was favored by the island lord, there would be a chance. However, after knowing this, Lin Yi was more and more surprised by Ning Shuifei's performance in the past. Since she grew up in this kind of atmosphere, Ning Shuifei's feminism should be deep-rooted. But after the two previous contacts, Ning Shuifei didn't show any signs of this. He felt that she was similar to Shangwan Laner, an innocent little princess. Is Ning Shuifei also a feminist? Lin Yi asked Shangwan Laner in a low voice. If it were other natives of Heaven Stage Island, they would be dumbfounded. She would be shocked to hear this new term, but Shangwan Laner had been with Lin Yi for so long. Besides, she had been pestering him to talk about the secular world, so she had long been used to this kind of word. Hearing this, she suddenly smiled and said, No, Although Fei Fei is a princess of West Island, she didn't receive a completely feminist education. She has the same education as us. Why? Isn't she the heir of West Island? Linny couldn't help but be a little surprised. Since Ning Shuifei was a princess of West Island, and West Island was a feminist society, it meant that she was likely to be the person who would take over West Island in the future. According to common sense, in this case, she must receive an authentic feminist education, or how could she take over power in the future? She is the heir, and that's why she can't receive a pure feminist education. Otherwise, how can she go out and deal with other masters of Heaven Stage Island in the future? Here, men's status is very low, but it's not the case in other places. If she is really a feminist raised from childhood, how can she change her mentality? It will be a big problem, Shangwan Laner said with a smile, but what she said was to the point. Lin Yi then understood that, as Shanghai Laner said, real feminists were almost incompatible with the worldview of others. But West Island couldn't separate itself from the other Heaven Stage islands. In this case, if a feminist took over the power, there would be a big problem indeed. Maybe she would make enemies on all sides, and her life would be difficult in the future. They walked and looked all the way. When they were about to arrive at the summer palace of the island owner, Lin Yi separated from Shangwan Laner and others. Shangwan Laner went to the residence in the summer palace to rest first, and others also dispersed to do their own things. As for Lin Yi, as the official envoy of North Island, he had to follow Feng Lu to deal with some related matters. The visit of the two islands was no less than the diplomacy of the two countries. Of course, all kinds of tedious procedures were inevitable. After Lin Yi finished all the dizzily busy work, he immediately went to find Shanghai Laner. The residence arranged for Shanghai Laner was in the summer palace of the island owner. According to the rules, no man could enter the summer palace of the island owner, but Lin Yi was an exception. He was the official envoy representing North Island. If they treated him as an ordinary man, it was tantamount to slapping North Island in the face. Besides, a few days ago, Ning Shuifei had specifically told everyone in the summer palace that Lin Yi was her good friend, and they must not neglect him. So after the guards confirmed Lin Yi's identity, they immediately let him go, and even sent a person to lead the way for Lin Yi, in case he wandered alone in the summer palace of the island owner and went to a place he shouldn't go. When he arrived at Shangwan Laner's residence, Lin Yi was about to reach out and knock on the door when he suddenly heard a burst of laughter. Obviously, several people inside were very happy. But besides Shangwan Laner and Ning Shuifei, there was another girl's voice, which sounded very familiar. Chapter 4636. A strange expression flashed on her face, which had always been indifferent. She couldn't help but have a thought in her mind. Did I hear it wrong? Lon this is my best friend whom I've told you about many times before. In fact, she was the one who prepared the materials for the foundation building elixir that I brought to the North Island last time. Ning Shuifei introduced with a smile. Little greater than or equal to little greater than or equal to said. I've known about this for a long time. She's not only your best friend, Fei Fei, but also mine. We've been through so many letters, and we've known each other for a long time. Shangwan Lan smiled and took Fei Fei's hand. Yes, we're all best friends. We're a group. After saying that, the three girls immediately laughed together, and they were very intimate. Lan that. Another girl suddenly wanted to say something, but stopped on second thought. What's that? Shanghai Laner looked at her mischievously and smiled at Ning Shuifei. They knew what the other girl wanted to say, but they just didn't say it out on purpose. Why hasn't he come yet? The girl asked shyly with a red face. Him? Who are you talking about? We have a lot of people here this time. If you don't tell me specifically, I don't know how to answer you. Shanghai Laner giggled. That's right. If you don't tell me specifically, how can I know who you're talking about? Ning Shuifei also teased her. In addition to studying all kinds of things, this girl was simply a natural simpleton. Usually, no one would see her blush or be shy. This opportunity was too rare. It's Brother Lin. the girl said with a red face. Oh, you're asking about junior brother. I don't know. He said he went to do the formalities, and I don't know when he'll finish them. As Shangwan Laner spoke up to this point, she suddenly rolled her eyes and said to little curly-coiled bear, "How about this, little white? Go find little junior brother and tell him that there is a cute girl here who is anxiously waiting for him. She's about to become a husband-gazing stone." "Of course not. I'm not a husband-gazing stone." The three girls immediately laughed and played together. When the little curly bear heard this, he dragged his exclusive weapon and walked out the door. When he opened the door, he was shocked to see Lin Yi standing at the door like a block of wood. His eyes stared blankly into the room. His gaze involuntarily fell on the girl. It was Han Jingjing, whom he had been yearning for day and night. The women in the room didn't expect such a scene to appear, and they were all dumbfounded. All of them were a little disheveled, and they quickly turned their heads to tidy up their clothes. Big brother Lin Yi. When Han Jingjing saw Lin Yi, she was pleasantly surprised. She had been looking forward to this day for a long time, especially after she learned that Lin Yi would lead a team to West Island this time. She was so excited that she couldn't sleep at night. She even abandoned the research on the casting mechanism that made her forget to eat and sleep. She stayed with Ning Shuefei every day, and the only thought in her mind was to see Lin Yi as soon as possible. Han Jingjing was just pleasantly surprised, but at this moment, Lin Yi was completely stunned. He was different from Han Jingjing. Han Jingjing had known that he was coming, so she had been mentally prepared, but he was not mentally prepared at all. This kind of ecstasy came so suddenly that even with his temperament, he couldn't digest it for a while. He could only stand there in a daze, looking at Han Jingjing in a daze. Jingjing is not a husband-gazing stone, but some people have become the real wife-gazing stone. Ning Shuefei covered her mouth and laughed. "I say, were you two going to look at each other affectionately? How about we clear the room first, and then we'll go out first so that you two can have a good look?" Shanghai Laner also joined in the fun, listening to the words of the two women. Han Jingjing's pretty face suddenly became redder. Even the roots of her ears were bright red. This kind of delicate and shy feeling was very attractive. Even Ning Shuefei and Shanghai Laner couldn't help but secretly envy her. Lin Yi couldn't help but secretly sigh. After more than 2 years, not only did Han Jingjing become more beautiful and charming, but even her temperament began to mature a little. There was a kind of cute charm of a little woman. Compared to the pure, natural dullness of the past, her lethality to men had increased by more than several times. After coming to his senses, Lin Yi suddenly strode in front of Han Jingjing. Ignoring the surprised eyes of Ning Shuefei and Shanghai Laner, he didn't say a word and hugged her in his arms. At this moment, 1,000 words were not as good as a hug. Han Jingjing was caught off guard and let out a low cry. However, after feeling Lin Yi's temperature and heartbeat, the slight estrangement because they hadn't seen each other for more than 2 years was completely melted. Her pretty face was stuck to Lin Yi's chest, full of happiness. Ning Shuefei and Shanghai Laner's eyes lit up as they watched from the side. They had imagined many situations in which Lin Yi and Han Jingjing would meet. Every time the two wrote letters, they would discuss this matter. They even deduced the lines for the meeting countless times, but they never thought that Lin Yi would do this. Lin Yi and Han Jingjing had a tacit understanding. At this time, there was really no need to do anything, and there was no need to say any words of love. It was all superfluous. A hug was enough to make their hearts tightly stick together, and that was enough. The two hugged for a long time. Ning Shuefei and Shanghai Laner were tired. Only then did Lin Yi finally let go of Han Jingjing. He couldn't help but ask, "Jingjing, why are you here?" He, when I was transmitted to Heaven Stage Island, I arrived here. Then, by chance, I met Fei Fei and lived with her. Han Jingjing smiled sweetly. "Oh, that's good." Lin Yi couldn't help but rejoice in his heart. Fortunately, Han Jingjing's fate was much better than Tian Chan and Sydney. Otherwise, if she really met someone bad, with her ignorant and naive personality, who knew how much suffering she would suffer, Lin, he didn't even dare to think of that situation. The more pure and kind a person was, the more blessed they were by God. This was the so-called fortune of fools. It was also the will of God. Lin, he looked at Han Jingjing, and then looked at Ning Shuifei and Shanghai Laner, who were standing on the side, and suddenly smiled sincerely. Of course, at this time, he wasn't thinking of dirty thoughts like the fortune of having 2 wives. Instead, he felt happy from the bottom of his heart. Because of Ning Shuifei, Han Jingjing was saved from all kinds of troubles, and because of Shanghai Laner, he could reunite with Han Jingjing after a long time. Wasn't this the will of God? Big brother Lin Yi, Jingjing knows everything about you. Han Jingjing suddenly blinked her big eyes and smiled. Huh? Lin Yi was slightly stunned. Chapter 46-37. I'm not a little spy. Shanghai Laner immediately retorted. Then what are you? Ning Shuifei squinted her eyes and asked mischievously. I just see that you two miss Junior Brother all the time. So I tell you something about him to satisfy your cravings. Shanghai Laner rolled her eyes and raised her head. I don't miss him all the time. Don't confuse me with Jing Jing. I just ask occasionally. Ning Shuifei suddenly blushed. Han Jingjing was Lin Yi's confidant, so it was normal for her to miss Lin Yi. But she herself only had a good impression of Lin Yi, which was far from that level. Oh, I thought you were the same as Jing Jing. It turns out that you are not. Then why do you ask her every few days, Fei Fei? Shangguan Lan'er said with a long tone, harboring malicious intentions. I don't ask about him every few days. Lan'er, don't talk nonsense. Ning Shuifei retorted with a blush. Seeing that Lin Yi next to her began to look at her in a strange way, she suddenly panicked and quickly changed the topic. Lan'er, don't talk about me. Think about your own problems first. Hee. My own problems? What problems can I have? Shanghai Laner spread her hands disapprovingly. Lan'er, you're too slow. Lin Yi didn't know Jing Jing when he was in the North Island, so you could be with him every day. But now he has found a confidant in the secular world. Are you disappointed? Ning Shuifei retorted with a teasing smile. Why should I be disappointed? Shanghai Laner looked at Ning Shuifei in confusion, and then looked at Lin Yi and Han Jingjing. He was baffled by what he heard. Don't you understand? Then you can't be with Lin Yi, because he has Jing Jing. Ning Shuifei pointed at Lin Yi and Han Jingjing, who were no longer hugging each other, but still stuck together like glue. Who says I can't? It's not like little Junior Brother only has Jing Jing. He still has Sister Xiao Dao. He also has a confidant on Middle Island, and there's more than one. Shanghai Laner was very familiar with these things. After all, Lin Yi had never hidden anything from her. Nakajima had told her about Tian Chan and Sydney. Zhong Dao also has one, and more than one? Ning Shuifei looked at Lin Yi in surprise. She couldn't help but look a little strange. This was the first time she heard of this. What's wrong with that? Do you think we are all feminists like your West Island? Our North Island is dominated by male cultivators. It's normal to have 3 or 4 wives. Shangguan Laner suddenly blushed when she said this. He reacted and said, why am I telling you all this? Don't think too much. I'm just explaining I'm not going to do that with little Junior Brother. Haha, Lan'er, you're just confessing. You're so cute. Ning Shuifei was immediately amused. Her mischievous eyes moved back and forth between Shanghai Laner, Han Jingjing, and Lin Yi. Her mother often said that she was insensitive and not as meticulous as other girls. But compared with Shangguan Lan'er and Han Jingjing, her 2 best friends, she was not as meticulous as them. She felt that she was already very normal. Lin Yi didn't know what to say when he heard these words. He could only stand aside and smile awkwardly. Shanghai Laner's eyes subconsciously looked at Han Jingjing, seeing that Han Jingjing also pursed her lips and smiled with them. Without showing any unhappy look, she suddenly relaxed for some reason. She couldn't help muttering to herself that this feeling was really weird. After everyone laughed and played for a while, the atmosphere gradually changed from the surprise at the beginning to warmth. Needless to say, The three women were all good friends, and Lin, he had a deep friendship with them. Even Ning Shuefei, and he had an unforgettable experience in the far North Island, so he naturally didn't feel alienated when he got along with the three women. In the 2 years in West Island, Jingjing, what have you been doing? This topic couldn't be avoided. Han Jingjing could know about Lin Yi through Shanghai Laner, but Lin Yi didn't know about her. But even if he didn't know, he could probably guess that this girl must be studying something, such as making an automatic alchemy furnace. Hee, I won't tell you first. Brother Lin Yi, you and Jingjing will know it. Han Jingjing stuck out her tongue cutely and deliberately kept him guessing. Oh, did she study out some good treasure? Seeing this, Lin Yi was stunned and immediately became interested. He immediately urged Han Jingjing to take him there. Ning Shuefei and Shanghai Laner naturally wouldn't be left behind. A group of people immediately rushed to Ning Shuefei's exclusive research room excitedly, even leaving dinner behind. As soon as he stepped into the research room, Lin Yi's eyes suddenly lit up. This was not a room, but a hall. It seemed that at least 5 or 6 rooms had been specially opened. Such a large hall could even hold an indoor 100-meter sprint competition. It was worthy of being the exclusive research room of the Princess of West Island. Looking around, there were all kinds of strange things in various shapes. Lin Yi thought that he had seen a lot, but at this moment, it was like Granny Lu entering the Grandview Garden. The room was full of things, but he couldn't recognize any of them. He couldn't help but say, "Did you make a future science and technology museum?" This was not an exaggeration at all. Han Jingjing always liked to study all kinds of things, and Ning Shuefei happened to be a kindred spirit. Otherwise, she wouldn't have such a large research room. After the two women met, they were even more out of control. Almost everything that passed through their hands would be changed beyond recognition, so there was such a scene in front of them. The room was filled with their research results, and the scope of their research was absolutely incredible. From cultivation to daily life, there was nothing missing. Although 99% of them were worthless waste, the remaining results were important inventions that could change the entire world if they were taken out. Han Jingjing was undoubtedly a genius, and Ning Shuefei, as the Princess of West Island, was extremely talented and could use any resources of West Island at any time. Such a person who was cultivated from an early age was naturally not worse than Han Jingjing. One had a typical scientific thinking in the secular world, the other had an ancient inheritance from the Heaven Stage Island. One had endless wonderful ideas, and the other had a vast and majestic knowledge. When the two of them met, they were a perfect match and complemented each other. This was a scientific research team made in heaven. Lin Yi was dizzy by the strange inventions in the room, while Shanghai Laner and Little Curly Bear seemed to have discovered a new continent, shouting and jumping excitedly. Chapter 4638. It wasn't the first time they came here, but there weren't so many things here the last time they came, especially not so many technological products. It was only after the Central Chamber of Commerce appeared that it became popular on Heaven Step Island, but the things in front of them obviously couldn't be bought in any Central Chamber of Commerce. Every item here was a unique invention. Jing, have you and Shuefei been busy with these things? After Lin Yi roughly looked around, like Shanghai Laner, he couldn't help but pick them up and carefully observe them one by one. He wanted to rely on his insight to see the specific use of these things. Of course, these were Han Jingjing and Ning Shuefei's whims. Some seemed to be clear at a glance, but in fact, the use was completely different from what they imagined. Some simply couldn't understand it all. Of course not. What you see is just the work of me and Jing in our spare time. It's not our main work. Ning Shuefei winked at Han Jingjing and said, "What you're about to see is the most important research result of the past 2 years. Although it's still a semi-finished product, once it's completed, it will shake the entire Heaven Island." What the hell is it? Why are you being so mysterious? Hurry up and say it. Don't keep us in suspense. Shanghai Laner couldn't wait. In the previous correspondence, She vaguely knew that the two women seemed to be researching something, but she had never been clear. After all, she wasn't like Ning Xuefei and Han Jingjing who liked to tinker with research. In this regard, she was purely a layman. Then come with me. I promise to open your eyes. Ning Xuefei smiled mysteriously and took the lead to walk inside. This huge research room actually had an inner room, which was the core research results of her and Han Jingjing. Pretending to be mysterious, Shanghai Laner muttered, but she didn't slow down at all. She followed closely behind Ning Xuefei with the little curly bear. What the hell is it? Lin, he was also completely intrigued. Hee, big brother Lin, you will know when you see it. This thing may be able to help you. Han Jingjing smiled mysteriously and pulled Lin Yi's hand to walk inside. Help me? Lin Yi was stunned. When he walked into the research room, he was stunned, speechless. Although this inner room was not small, it was at least half the size of the outer room. However, it was not as messy as the outer room. It looked a lot more spacious. There was only one thing in total, a huge box. What is this? It's actually made of superior dark steel. Where did you get so much superior dark steel? Shangguan Laner and little curly bear circled around the box curiously. She was a person who knew what was good and what was bad. Dark steel was a rare commodity, not to mention top-grade dark steel. This kind of good material was usually not used to forge magical weapons. Using so much top-grade dark steel to make a big metal box, he was simply an invincible prodigal. Could this be? Lenny looked at it thoughtfully. His attention was not on the material, but on the internal structure of the dark steel box. The various structures inside were extremely exquisite and complicated, but looked somewhat familiar. He felt that this thing was somewhat familiar. Han Jingjing was about to introduce it, but Ning Xuefei covered her mouth and said mysteriously, "Guess. Let's see if you can guess it. This is Jing Jing's and my painstaking efforts, and it was specially made for you. If you can't guess it, then you're a heartless man. Then we won't give it to you. We'll keep it for ourselves." Heartless man? Jing Jing has no problem saying this, but little junior brother didn't do anything to you, Fei Fei. What right do you have to say that he's a heartless man? Shangguan Lan squinted at Ning Xuefei with evil intentions. She was taking revenge for what she had done to Ning Xuefei just now. I'm saying this for Jing Jing. Ning Xuefei suddenly blushed. She stole a glance at Lin Yi and saw that he was looking at the dark steel box thoughtfully. She breathed a sigh of relief subconsciously. Han Jingjing smiled at the side without saying a word. Lin Yi looked back and forth at the internal structure of the dark steel box. He pondered for a moment and said, "Is this thing used for forging?" After all, Lin Yi had been with King of Garbage for so long, and he was a dabbler in the art of blacksmithing. His understanding of blacksmithing was far deeper than a layman's. He didn't know the structure of each part of the box, but he had a rough idea of how it looked like a foundry. After all, he'd seen these things in King of Garbage's secret base before, just that the shape was different. Forging? Shangguan Lan was stunned. She looked at the black iron box again, but she was still confused. She couldn't see what this thing had to do with forging. All the forging masters in the world needed to choose a unique forging environment, and, at the same time, they needed to be equipped with all kinds of forging facilities. How could it be placed directly in a black iron box? Brother Lin Yi is so smart. This is an automatic forging mechanism, Han Jingjing admitted with a smile. Well, at least you have a good eye. Our efforts didn't go to waste. Ning Xuefei nodded and said, "It really is." Lin Yi was still in disbelief after getting a clear answer. He'd never seen anything like this before, and even the King of Garbage's jaw would have dropped to the floor in shock. Han Jingjing's words especially surprised him. Wait a minute, Jingjing, you're saying that this is an automatic weapon crafting mechanism? That's right. As long as the casting formula is set up in advance and the corresponding materials are put in, someone will be watching from the side and make some minor adjustments depending on the situation. The rest is controlled by itself. It's even easier to operate than the god's pesticide cauldron. Han Jingjing giggled. Lin Yi's eyes lit up when he heard that. He suddenly thought of King of Junk's current predicament. He quickly asked, "Can it accurately control the fire?" "Of course we can. Controlling the heat is the most basic requirement. Our automatic casting mechanism can even accurately control a series of environmental factors such as air pressure, humidity, and so on. Only by doing this can we ensure that the casting process is foolproof. What do you think? Aren't we awesome?" Ning Shufa proudly raised her head. "That's great. That's great. This problem can finally be solved." Lin Yi was surprised and delighted. Chapter 4639. No matter how experienced the blacksmith was, there would always be errors in the control of the fire. Many weapons would have flaws because of this, and so would even give up halfway. However, the automatic casting mechanism was different. As long as the casting formula was set correctly, there was almost no possibility of it going wrong in this aspect. It just happened to make up for the King of Junk's shortcomings in this aspect. He would definitely be ecstatic when he knew about this. "Brother Linny, don't be too happy just yet. Our automatic casting mechanism is not truly completed yet. In fact, it is only a semi-finished product." Han Jingjing poured cold water on him helplessly. "Huh? Semi-finished product?" Linny's expression suddenly froze. Was it too early for him to be happy? Yes. Although the general structure is almost complete, there are still some technical problems that have not been solved. Now, we are waiting for the electronic components of the Central Chamber of Commerce. Han Jingjing nodded. Uffed. Lin, he almost choked when he heard that. He could not help but said in surprise, "Cough, cough, this thing needs electronic components." "Yes, otherwise, how could it be intelligent? This kind of intelligent chip component is relatively difficult to obtain. It is impossible to get it on Heavenly Island." Fortunately, the Central Chamber of Commerce suddenly appeared, just in time to provide charcoal in the snow. Hee hee. Han Jingjing laughed. The Central Chamber of Commerce even sells this kind of specialized chip component? Lenny could not help but be surprised again. It was fine that the Central Chamber of Commerce set off a wave of technological products on Heavenly Island, but he did not expect that they would even sell intelligent chip components. Were they planning to complete industrialization on Heavenly Island? Yes, but those intelligent chip components are too eye-catching. We dare not rashly place an order, afraid that it will attract attention. This kind of thing is actually very sensitive. It may leak the secret of our automatic casting mechanism, so we have to be careful. Ning Shufa nodded. "Then what about you guys?" Laner asked curiously. Hee, I asked Fei Fei to order some digital equipment from them. Although they're all high-end goods, they're all consumer goods that can be enjoyed. No one will suspect anything even if I buy a lot of them. The transistors and various electronic devices can be disassembled and used, and the chip components can also be pieced together. I believe it won't be a big problem." Han Jingjing smiled confidently. Her confidence in this aspect was really unparalleled. It's a pity that the Central Chamber of Commerce is too slow. We've reserved it for so long, but the digital equipment still hasn't been delivered to us. It's taking so long. I'll get someone to hurry them up later, Ning Shufa said with a pout. Oh, could it be that they're deliberately refusing to sell? Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat. That's not true. Their Central Chamber of Commerce has to rely on my mother to do business here. How could they have the guts to not sell on purpose? Ning Shufa stuck out her tongue. This place was different from the North Island. Although the North Island was controlled by the 3 pavilions, the environment was relatively relaxed. Any Chamber of Commerce could enter as long as it had the strength. But it was not possible in the West Island. Women's rights dominated here, and the overall atmosphere was very united and exclusive. To do business here, one had to obey the Ning family. If the Ning family was unhappy, no matter how powerful the Chamber of Commerce was, it would not be able to survive here. Why is that? Lin Yi asked curiously. The main reason is that the digital equipment that Jingjing ordered are not common goods. Even in the secular world, only a few places sell them, so they don't have any stock in hand. They can only reserve them first and see when they can deliver them. This is also the privilege of Fei Fei. If it were others, they wouldn't be able to reserve them, Han Jingjing said with a smile. I see. Lin Yi suddenly understood. With the Central Chamber of Commerce's current momentum, even if ordinary people had a lot of spirit jades, they could only buy whatever they had. Only privileged people like Ning Xuefei could make this special request. After all, the Central Chamber of Commerce wanted to survive in the West Island. As long as the things were not too difficult to get, they would definitely satisfy them. At most, it would be a little troublesome for them to purchase the goods separately. After a pause, Lin Yi suddenly said, By the way, Jingjing, don't you feel that the Central Chamber of Commerce is unfathomable? I wrote a letter to Ling Shan and the others in the secular world before, and they even replied, through this Central Chamber of Commerce. Yes, they can connect to the secular world, and they are indeed very powerful. So after settling this automatic casting mechanism, Jingjing decided to research this next. It's just that there's a lack of information right now, and I can't find any clues in a short period of time. But since the scientists in the center can achieve it, Jingjing won't be any worse than them. Han Jingjing clenched her fists excitedly. If there was anything in the world that could make her so excited, it would probably be an unsolvable problem like this. Ugh, Jingjing, you're too amazing. You even want to research this? Lin Yi slapped his forehead and couldn't help but feel a little dizzy. When he himself encountered something like this, he would only think of asking Zhang Liju for help, or trying to sneak into the Central Chamber of Commerce to get this core secret. But when it came to Han Jingjing, she was excitedly researching it all by herself. As expected, the thinking of a genius was not something a normal person could imagine. At least in this aspect, Han Jingjing was miles ahead of Lin Yi. This sounded shocking, but if one thought about it carefully, all of Han Jingjing's inventions, including the godly pesticide cauldron, were all extremely overpowered. If it were someone else saying this, Lin Yi would definitely take it as a joke, but it wasn't impossible when it came to Han Jingjing. Who knew? His dream of traveling between Sky-class Island and the secular world might come from her. Hee hee, Jingjing, isn't that amazing? Han Jingjing smiled shyly. Ugh, let me be alone for a while. Lin Yi was speechless. She even wanted to research something as overpowered as traveling between the secular world. Wasn't that amazing? Were there any other amazing people in the world? Oh, then Loner, let's go out. He wants to stay here alone with Jingjing. Ning Xuefei took the opportunity to smile playfully. Okay. Let them look at the Wangfu stone and the Wangfu stone to their heart's content. Let's go eat first. I'm hungry. Shangwan Laner echoed with a smile. The banquet should be almost ready. You two just stay here for a while. Don't be too late. The official envoy of North Island can't be absent from the banquet. Ning Xuefei grimaced mischievously, then pulled Shangwan Lan out of the door. Little Curly Bear wanted to play in the research room for a while, but in the end, he was dragged away by the two women by the ear. Chapter 4640. Previously, because of the existence of Ning Xuefei and Shangwan Laner, although their hearts were burning, they always restrained it. But now that a man and a woman were alone in a room, the longing that had accumulated for 2 years was suddenly out of control. Ugh! Han Jingjing suddenly murmured with a red face. Lin Yi smiled slightly, reached out, and held her in his arms. The two were tightly attached to each other, like glue, and did not separate for a long time. Hey, why are they so conservative? Shouldn't a man and a woman be alone be dry wood and hot fire? How can they just hug each other and be done? Ning Xuefei, the princess of West Island, lied on the crack of the door of the research room without caring about her image, and her face was full of disappointment. She thought that Lin Yi and Han Jingjing would have further intimate actions, and deliberately pulled Shanghai Laner to lie on the crack of the door for so long. As a result, these two did nothing but hug each other. They were really two pieces of wood. Fei, you are so bad. You even want to see things that are not suitable for children. I really can't stand you. Shanghai Laner said with a scornful face. Well, Lana, since you are so noble, can you not squeeze me? Why are you so eager to grab my seat? Ning Xuefei looked at Shangwan Lan who was lying on her head, and curled her lips speechlessly. These two girls completely forgot that Lin Yi was a master at the peak of the early stage of Yuanying realm, and the strength of his divine sense was far beyond the existence of the same level. Even a fool could notice that they were lying on the crack of the door so blatantly, let alone Lin Yi. The West Island Envoy Mansion was not far from the Island Master's palace. This was a place specially used to receive envoys from all sides. At this moment, Su Lingqiong and Kong Mingming had just settled down. For the convenience of the task, the two of them specially asked to be arranged in the same room, so that they could discuss and act at any time. Su Lingqiong was sitting and drinking tea, while Kong Mingming was serving tea by the side. At this time, a subtle red shadow suddenly flashed in the window and landed on the table in front of them. Their eyelids suddenly twitched. It was a bloody bat. The blood bat was a spirit beast that was used for internal communication. A secret code was tied to it. It was actually a message from the mysterious man. Su Lingqiong and Kong Mingming couldn't help but look at each other. It wasn't strange at all to receive this kind of secret message when they were in the North Island, but now they were far away in the West Island. They didn't expect that they could also receive it, which was a bit incredible. More importantly, as soon as they settled down, a secret message arrived. His timing was so precise. It was truly astounding. Su Lingqiong and Kong Mingming looked at the bloodbath on the table. They looked at each other and unconsciously revealed a thoughtful expression. However, it was not the time to think too much. Su Lingqiong reached out and took the letter. After reading the contents of the mission, his expression became a little strange. What happened to young Master Su? Kong Mingming consciously stepped aside and asked. At his level, he couldn't read this kind of high-level secret message. Once the rules of the center were violated, the consequences would be unthinkable. He did not have the guts to do so. Read it yourself. Su Lingqiong casually threw the letter to Kong Mingming. The mysterious man didn't ask for secrecy, and the mission needed him and Kong Mingming to complete it together. Of course, there was no need to hide it. Kong Mingming hurriedly took the letter and read it carefully. After a while, he suddenly looked up at Su Lingqiong and said weakly, "Young Master Su, I don't understand it. I forgot about this." Su Lingqiong patted his head. Then he remembered that the secret code in the letter needed to be specially learned, and ordinary people couldn't understand it all. At Kong Mingming's level, he was not qualified to learn the secret code of the center. Kong Mingming smiled embarrassedly and had to hand the letter back to Su Lingqiong. He waited to hear the rest. The superior assigned 2 tasks. The first task is to find a way to participate in a trial in West Island and collect a kind of medicinal material called Thunder Xianrot Tan. This task is quite normal, and it shouldn't be too troublesome to carry it out. But the second task is a bit weird. Su Lingqiong rubbed his chin thoughtfully. What's the second task? Kong Mingming hurriedly asked. The superior asked us to find a way to prevent Lin Yi from making friends with people in West Island, especially not to let him make friends with powerful and influential people. If this trend appears, we must try our best to destroy it and never let him get what he wants. Don't you think this task is weird? Su Lingqiong said with a puzzled look. Before, the mysterious man had warned him in person that he couldn't touch Lin Yi without permission, or he would have to bear the consequences. Now he suddenly assigned such a task. It was obvious that he didn't want West Island to be Lin Yi's help. Su Lingqiong really couldn't figure out what kind of deep consideration the superior had for the time being. And the key was that he really didn't know how to do the second task. As the official special envoy of North Island, it was normal for Lin Yi to get close to any high-level official in West Island, and others couldn't find fault with it. How could Su Lingqiong destroy it? He couldn't run to people and say that Lin Yi was a treacherous and cunning guy. Could he? Not to mention that it wouldn't work. If he really did that, the first thing Su Lingqiong would do when he returned to North Island, he would be held accountable by Shanghai Tianhua. This second mission is my area of expertise. Kong Xiaoming's eyes lit up after he heard it, and he said excitedly, "Specialty? What's your specialty?" Su Lingqiong was stunned. It's a little hard to say, but in front of you, Child Su, I won't flatter myself. Child Sue, have you forgotten that I'm best at harming others without benefiting myself? If you ask me to do something big alone, I may not succeed, but if I just want to ruin someone else's business, it's just a piece of cake. Kong Ming Ming rubbed his hands excitedly. When it came to this, he almost said that he couldn't do anything right, but was good at spoiling things. Is that true? Su Lingqiang's heart moved, but he still said with uncertainty, but you've cheated Lin Yi a lot before, but it seems that you've never really cheated him, right? Being exposed by Su Lingqiang, Kong Ming suddenly blushed. He scratched his head awkwardly and said, "This is mainly because the nature is different. I used to want to deal with Lin Yi, but I underestimated his strength every time. But this time it's different. We don't need to deal with him. We just need to make things difficult for him. It's much easier. At that time, I'll think of a way to trick him." Seeing that Kong Ming Ming was so confident and reasonable, Su Lingqiang had confidence in him. He nodded and said, "Well, you'll be in charge of this. If you do a good job, I'll personally ask for a reward from my superior." "Thank you, Child Su. I won't let you down this time." Kong Ming Ming was instantly overjoyed that you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.